Right. Well, we are hypothetically live. I will give it a few minutes for people to join before we get into the nitty gritty. But welcome to Get Ready with Me Medievally and a Medieval Sewing Party with the Creative Contessa. I'm the Contessa, and today I've got some chores to do with you all in terms of repair and care of my medieval reenactment goods. But of course, as has become customary, very first thing is going to be getting dressed in my today's work clothes. So as always, I'm starting off in my linen smokka. Remember, the word shift doesn't come about until the 17th century, and the word chemise doesn't enter the English language really until like the 18th or the 19th century. So, smock, geometric construction. And just because I know I already have some people, just let me know if you can hear me, everyone. And good morning, and welcome to my live stream. So, I've already got the smock on. So, the next thing we're going to put on. Yeah. Next thing I'm going to put on is under that little feline overlord there. That's my kirtle. Okay, Katie, sorry. I know you literally just got there, but I need to put it on. She always knows exactly what item I need, and she will put herself on it as best she can. Excellent. Thank you, Susan. So this is a kirtle, right? This is the foundational layer. This one is a linen kirtle, and no, I don't really have any good evidence supporting linen kirtles in the 15th century, but there it is. I often live and travel in extremely hot and humid climates like Thailand, which did not develop medieval clothing, medieval European styles of clothing with good reason. So sometimes we have to make these little accommodations. Now, there are some versions of some weaves of very lightweight wool, which could be not overly hot, but nothing has the cooling and wicking properties of plant fibers like linen and ramie, which is metal cloth, by the way. As always, front is lace closed. Here is a finger loop braided lace. And if you'd like to make your own laces, if you'd like to learn how, I have a beginning finger loop braiding tutorial on my YouTube channel. It's like 21 minutes long, tells you everything you need to learn and everything you need to know in order to do your own finger loop braiding and make your own laces like this. Oh God, now the cat's been triggered with the string. No, darn it. Welcome to my life. Tiffy, welcome back. Yeah, so Tim's comment is that he can understand why they had servants back then and to help with all the layers. And here's the reality that even if you didn't have servants, people didn't live alone. They just didn't. There's a reason that hermits were considered a special and unusual and maybe even strange class of people because humans didn't live alone in the Middle Ages. That's not how it went. People who lived alone were viewed with suspicion generally. So you would always have fellows with you. Usually people live multiple generations of family in a single home. So even if you didn't have a servant to assist you, you had family members to assist you. You had sisters or aunts or mothers or even daughters to help you with your hair and your gowns. If you're a man, you had brothers or fathers or uncles or sons to help you with your doublet and hosen, right? With your pourpoint and chausses, as they're called in French. So, clothes were designed with the idea that you will always have a person there with you. Oh my, what the hell did I just do? You will always have a person there with you to help you. Interesting. I completely wrapped it around itself. It is extra humid today, and this back room does not have air conditioning. So if you see me glistening, that's not makeup. That is 100% authentic Contessa perspiration. I personally don't really mind the humidity and the heat, but that just means that I might get a little damp during this live stream. Yeah. Have you put your hose on? I'm not putting hose on today. We're going with the quick and dirty getting dressed. Thank you, Susan, for asking if I put my hosen on. I've not, but that's because I'm not putting them on at all today. I'm just going for a quick and dirty getting dressed. because I want to get down to the very essential tasks that I need to complete. Today I'm going to be walking you through the care and feeding of your medieval turn shoes. So we're going to be doing some focusing on shoes today, not just how they're made and how they look in the 15th century, but also how you care for them. A lot of modern people don't know how to care for leather anymore in the West. Don't know how to care for leather anymore. They don't even know that they need to care for leather shoes. So I'm going to show you good leather care techniques. And then that also means at the same time, I'm going to finally treat my poor shoes, my medieval shoes, after their 2 weeks of living medievally in very dusty and very dry conditions. And once, if I get through all 5 pairs of my shoes, then we'll go on back to repairing hosen today, repairing my hosen. Okay. So let me see, just checking any comments. Okay. Okay, so linen kirtle for the win. Now, my ribbons actually came out of my hair, so my braids fell out. So I thought I would take advantage of the opportunity then to go ahead and show you how to use a medieval comb. First, by pulling out the hair from the last combing. How to use a medieval comb. And then braiding my hair and tying it off in the way using materials that they would have had in the 15th century. So yeah. Do you have a video on making shoes for yourself? I have never made my own shoes, so I do not. Morgan Donner, who is a fellow medieval tuber, she did a video on making her own shoes. We have made our own pianelle, these leather overshoes, platform shoes that you wear when you're outside. And we did some shorts on those, but we didn't do a whole how-to series. If my condottiero is watching, he did record video, and I think he could put together a reasonable project log for that, actually. Anyway, okay, so combing my hair. So medieval combs have 2 parts, and some of you have observed rightly that this looks very much like a lice comb. That's not an accident. So you have the broad tines and you have the narrow tines. You start with the broad tines, and that's how you get the knots out. Now, I split my hair into 2 bunches like this and bring it forward because I'm combing my own hair rather than having my damsel do it for me. No damsels here, no valets, no one. My cats are useless for hair combing. So I basically grab my hair, the bunch of hair in a hand, and I start at the very ends to get, you see how smoothly that goes, And then I work my way up bit by bit. First, we are using the big tines, and that will remove the knots. And then the small tines will distribute the oils in the hair and also remove any detritus. There is something, I don't know why, but there's just something more satisfying about using medieval comb than there is about using a brush. Hair brushes. I don't think we start seeing hair brushes until we don't see them in the Middle Ages or the Renaissance. I'm not certain when they make an appearance. I know that people are using hairbrushes by the 19th century. So I'm not certain when that transition happened. My suspicion, my theory is, and this is purely a Contessa theory and not based on any actual research. My theory is that as people stopped covering women stopped covering their hair and started having hairstyles, coiffeurs, instead of, practical braids that were just taped up and then everything was hidden. Once they started doing proper hairdos, then they needed a brush to help create volume and that sort of thing. That's my theory anyway. But if you actually know why we transitioned from combs to hairbrushes, let me know. They had brushes in the Middle Ages, absolutely, but not for hair. They were used for cleaning things and for horses. They had brushes for horses, ironically. Brushes are actually mentioned in the Medieval Home Companion, I think, in the section on the care and purchasing of horses. Right. So yeah, they had brushes, but they weren't using them for their own hair. They were using combs for their own hair. And I know you can't prove a negative, so what I'm going to say is I have seen 0 evidence of hairbrushes for people in Western Europe. I cannot speak for other parts of the medieval world, and there's a whole medieval world beyond Europe. But in Western Europe, anyway, and even Eastern Europe, I don't have any evidence of brushes. I have not seen evidence of hair brushes in the middle, any part of the Middle Ages. Combs aplenty, brushes none. I have to say, I really love the feeling of the wooden tines over my scalp. It just feels so nice. It feels, it's a light massage effect, stimulates the scalp. So this is actually really good for getting blood flow to the follicles of your hair. And while your hair is mostly dead, the follicle is not. And so by stimulating blood flow to your follicle, you can help encourage thicker, healthier hair that might grow a little bit more quickly. You can't do very much to impact how your genetics work, but within the limits of your genetics, combing your hair this way could be a way to encourage a little more growth anyway. Let me see. Miss any chats? Okay. So I'm just going to show you in a minute just how this little bit of combing actually removes quite a bit of the air gunk, I'll call it, from my hair. I should also say that my hair has been in braids for about 3 days now. So this is 3 days worth of hair in detritus. So don't be overly horrified. Let's see if I can reasonably get the camera to focus on it. Yeah, so you can see all of that detritus that the comb just got by just combing through my hair. And the wood is just really good at attracting, sort of using the oil that it's distributing to also then help draw off the dirt. So this is part of keeping your hair clean in the Middle Ages. We don't have evidence of regular hair washing. We know they washed their hair, but it would have been something that you wouldn't necessarily have time for every day, especially the drying of your hair, which would have had to happen through air drying, right? So this is what I call dry washing, because you're using a dry comb to actually help clean the gunk off of your hair. Okay, so now that the gunk is out of my hair, or the knots are out of my hair, rather, there's my condottiero. There he is. Condottiero, people are requesting a project log on the PNLA. Just putting that out there. Okay, so now I'm going to switch. We just finished with the big tines. I'm now going to switch to the fine tines. And this is where it will really work on finely distributing the natural sebum, your natural hair oil through your hair. And, modern shampoo companies for about the last 100 years have really made hair oil the enemy. But the reality is that the sebum in your scalp, what you might call your natural oils, is actually perfectly calculated to keep your hair healthy. So by stripping it off of our scalp and stripping it out of our hair on a regular basis, we're actually artificially creating this need to then condition it. So it's a nasty cycle. And of course, the producers of shampoo and conditioner would absolutely love you to continue that cycle as often as possible. But the reality is that if you give your hair a rest phase, your scalp a rest phase from hyper washing and constantly stripping the oils out, eventually the oil production will down regulate to be what it should be. And then you should be able to actually get away with only washing your hair occasionally as necessitated by there's a lot of pollution in the air, unfortunately. And while this comb does a really good job, I don't know how much it gets the fine particles out that result from, say, city pollution. So, yeah. So the answer to your question, I'm certain, is going to be, how often do you wash your hair? It depends on how often I go outside. Once a week, maybe less. But I can tell, my hair will tell me when it's time for it to be washed, instead of just combed to be clean. It lets me know it gets really stiff and kind of straw-like, and then I know it's time. Okay. And again, I'm actually dragging the comb. I'm going to put that through my foot one of these days. I'm actually dragging the comb through my scalp, across my scalp, intentionally, sort of churning up my scalp. Okay. So now that my hair is all nice and combed, and I will try to show you what, even after what the fine. You can see what the fine side picked up. And on the back side here of this comb, you can also see some of the other detritus that was left behind. Yep. Yeah, so exactly. This combing really helps make my hair look nice and shiny, right? Isn't that beautiful? Medieval hair for the win. Okay, next step. uh, you may notice that I'm acquiring a larger feline audience as this stream goes on. uh, being a feline, the servitor of feline overlords is a tricky life. Okay, next we're going to braid it in just simple braids. I actually don't have evidence of so-called French braids from the Middle Ages or Renaissance. Everything I see seems to be either a just a regular old three-strand braid. I have seen some evidence possibly of a four-strand braid, but not the kind of braid that actually starts high up on your scalp and works its way down. I'm not certain when French braids were invented or when they started becoming prominent, but the Middle Ages, again, I can't prove a negative. What I can say is I haven't seen evidence of French braiding from the Middle Ages. So we're just going to go with a regular old three-way braid. And so it's pretty standard. But I'm going to get it started, and then I'm going to braid in finger loop braiding laces, and that's how I'm going to tie it off. So I actually braid them into my hair all the way down. Like so. A question, do I prefer wood to bone? I will openly confess I have not been able to try out a bone comb or an ivory comb even, ivory being a species of bone. So I can't speak for that. I've only had wooden combs. So I cannot give any evidence, but I kind of suspect that a bone comb might be better at distributing the oils and grabbing things than an ivory comb would be, just because of the nature of the granularity of wood versus the extremely smooth nature of the ivory. So once I get to the bottom, I just basically sorry, I started working automatically while talking. So here we have the two strands. So then I just take them and I counter wrap them around the base a couple of times. And then I'm just going to tie it off with anything, with a little bow, with a knot, whatever, something that I can get out relatively easily on my own. Because again, my cats are useless. They're adorable. They're cute. I love them. I wouldn't want to be without them, but they're not very good at helping me dress or undress. Okay, so now we go to the other side. Oh, Laurie, welcome. Lovely to see you again. So we know that they used, in fact, behind me, you can see one way in which they tied off the base of the hair using these ribbons of fabric. These would have been called tape in the Middle Ages. Interestingly, we use the word tape now, and it automatically implies adhesive tape. But there's a reason that actually it's officially called adhesive tape, because tape, in and of itself, the word does not imply adhesion. So they actually used to use fabric tape, what modernly we might call a ribbon in some cases, to actually bind their hair. And I can show you an example in the allegorical tapestry that's right behind me. So I reach the bottom, and then I take the ends and I just counter wrap them. Take 1, 2, 3, and then try not to tie my hair in. I have one side that's easier for me to do than the other side. I'll just put it that way. Okay. Right. Okay. Hair all braided, and now I'm going to cover it up. So today we're just going with the kerchief, the couvre-chef, the cover-chef, as it's called in 15th century English. But first, I'm going to show you a different way of doing things. So my braids are actually long enough that I can actually take them and tie them over my head in a crown-like thing by just kind of twisting them around each other like that. See? So that's another option. And you do see this when the rare times you do see women's bare heads in 15th century France, Burgundy, or England. I have seen this like once or twice, which is a lot considering that there's like 5 pictures depicting real women with their hair off instead of, some goddess or something like that. Okay, so we put the bonnet on, the kerchief on, like so. Slips on nice and easily. Right. And then we bring the actual sort of the veil part. You want to look at it that way. The veil part forward, and we twist into itself like so till we reach the bottom, and then I'm just going to bring it up over the top like this, and then tie a knot like so, and then tuck those tails in because they're pretty long. They look a little silly if I leave them out and they get distracting. And because it is a little warm and humid in here, I'm definitely going to be folding that brim back. Okay. So, any questions before we move on to the working part? And this is it. And actually, so because we're going to be working today, we're going to be doing literally dirty work by cleaning my leather shoes. I'm actually going to pull off all of my rings. They're all coming off because I don't want them to be disgusting. Apparently the humidity has caused that finger to swell a little bit. Okay, briefly, let's just talk about some of these rings. This is a replica of a love ring. It actually says Amour me tient. That's found in the V&A's collection, actually the Victoria Albert Museum's collection. This is a replica by Armor and Castings. You can purchase it. I think it's $60 or something like that, which is a steal for a replica of this caliber. Then this is a medieval stirrup ring. This is another medieval stirrup ring. And then this is a silver ring with a lapis lazuli stone. And if you decide you want to go to Armor and Castings to their website and purchase any of their amazing medieval replica items, Contessa 10 gets you a discount. They are a channel sponsor, full disclosure. But I've spent hundreds of dollars on their product before they became a channel sponsor because I believe in them that much. Right. Okay. Questions about the ensemble? Otherwise, we are going to go ahead, and I fear that for now there might be a slight lag in the comments. I'm worried they're going to get really fast again like they did yesterday, but I fixed the chat, or sort of fixed the chat for those who don't know. If you were participating yesterday, you might have noticed that we had some miscreants in our live chat, and I basically am making it more challenging for the miscreants. I've made it so that you have to be a subscriber for 10 minutes in order to comment in the live chat. Yeah. Okay, Tiffy, is your dress primarily from Italy? All of your costumes? No, not at all. This is actually a Franco-Burgundian ensemble, and this is the underlayers, really. This is or casual at-home wear or working clothing, depending on your social status. So Franco-Burgundian, and possibly also, this style was probably also worn in England in the 15th century, and underneath. There should be, if I were to go out, like out and about in the 15th century, I should put another layer over top of this, which would be the guna, the gown, the robe in French. And those are the gowns that you see, especially with the long trains and the turn back V-neck collars, right? So this is what goes under that big that beautiful, luxurious overgown. So this is Franco-Burgundian. Yesterday was also Franco-Burgundian. I have actually not worn Italian clothing since Penzig. Maybe for medieval story time tomorrow, I will put on something Italian. There was a reason I didn't do that today, and I don't remember. Oh, right, because I'm going to be doing dirty work, and this linen dress I can throw in the washing machine. That's why I knew there was a reason. I was going to go not full 1480. I was going to go at home 1480 Florentine for you all today, but then I remembered that I'll be doing some really dirty stuff. So good question. Thank you for asking that, Tiffy. Let me see. Why is the stirrup ring called that? Oh, it's called a stirrup ring because it looks like a stirrup, actually. Let me see if I can. There we go. I keep forgetting to put my hand up, right? Because it looks like a stirrup, a riding stirrup. Looks like a medieval riding stirrup. Maybe not necessarily so much a modern one, although a little bit. If you were to flatten out the bottom, you would see it looks like a stirrup. right? Like on a saddle, that kind of stirrup. Yeah, that's a very good question. Okay, well, let us go ahead and reposition everything for the up close experience of cleaning my leather stuff. I really need to. Condottiero, I really need to scrape up that hook that's now adhered to the floor because I know I'm going to put it through my foot. Okay, oh goodness, goodness, everyone. Unfortunately, he is sitting in the only spot I can really sit. So I'm going to have to move him. Tommy, baby. Tommy, come on. Just scoot over. Just scoot. Just, I know, your life sucks. It's okay. Okay. Let's see if I need to lower that a little bit, maybe. Yeah, I'm going to lower the tripod. Sorry, it's going to get a little motiony here. Yes, Tommy decided he didn't want to hang out if he couldn't sit in exactly the spot he wanted. Right. Okay, there we go. Excellent. So next up, shoe cleaning. So I've got a bunch of different medieval footwear here that I'm going to be cleaning, and I'm not going to be using particularly medieval cleaning methods, not particularly super modern either, just because I haven't actually been able to find anything specifically about the care of leather in the Middle Ages. Now, when I say I haven't been able to find it, I haven't exactly done an extensive search for it either. So if you know anything based on primary source evidence about medieval leather care, let me know. I do know I have found the mention of olive oil for harness, for the care of harness, which is not horse harness, the armor, 15th century word for armor. So what I use actually a combination of items. I have otter wax, saddle soap, and this is made locally in Portland, Oregon, and I like it for many reasons, one of which is that it comes in a metal can. I like that it comes in a metal, very sustainable thing. And this is actually, it is a very natural combination, very natural saddle soap. So it's not made of lots of harsh chemicals, right? It's made of not harsh chemicals because, as many of you have pointed out, pretty much anything is a chemical at some level. The thing about saddle soap, the reason you want to use saddle soap for cleaning your leather is because it's designed for leather cleaning. If you use soap, any other kind of soap, and God forbid dish soap, you're going to strip the oils right out of the leather and it will dry and crack. So saddle soap for the win. I like Otter Wax. They're not a channel sponsor. I'm not receiving any money from them whatsoever for this. So Otter Wax, for those of you who prefer a more natural formulation for your leather care. Poor kitty looked so comfortable. Yeah, he was pretty comfy. Will the cats help you clean shoes? The cats will probably help me clean shoes when I get to the shoes with the laces because they can hear the motion of string, right? So I also have here, I'm going to bring this a little bit closer. I have a bowl of water and I've got a towel. Had a towel. I have a dirty towel. Well, I thought I had everything and I brought a towel. Condottiero, I brought one of your towels out because it's gray and I don't care what happens to it. And apparently I left it behind. So I'm going to substitute something else that I don't care about either. Okay. So when you're cleaning leather items, you really want to make sure that any clothing you care about is either protected or that you don't care about the clothing that you're wearing. I did have a towel, but I left it God knows where. So I'm just going to cover my lap in my ripped up leather stockings, the black ones, black linen hosen, because they're black and they're washable. So protecting my lap. I'll just put that down there like that. Okay, so we're protecting my lap. And then I've got this is an old dish towel, you can tell because it's filled with holes. And this is why I save these things so that I can use them like a medieval person. I will use this until it falls apart. And then if I can find someone who wants to make rag paper, I'll give it to them. Sure, I would be interested in making rag paper too, but I just don't have the time to do all the things. Not myself anyway. And medieval people didn't do all the things themselves either. Medieval society, the medieval economy was highly specialized. There were specialists, and even in specialized beyond what we might consider specialized. Carpenters are very general now, but in the Middle Ages, there was a difference between a carpenter and a joiner and a turner and a wainwright and a cartwright. Even though all those people work in wood, they all did different things in wood and they worked together, but there wasn't a lot of overlap in their actual tasks. So yeah, even though we modern medieval living historians, or living historians in general, modern ones, whether medieval or otherwise, we end up doing many of these crafts ourselves in the pursuit of recreating an item, because we want either to experience all those different crafts and learn all those handcrafts, or we can't find someone else who can do various of the stages for us, so we do it ourselves. But in the medieval economic world, in the world of medieval production, tasks were highly specialized and very tightly regulated by guilds in most places. So anyway, back to my rag. So I've got this nice rag towel, and then I've got the first shoe we're going to be cleaning. So this is a pianella in Italian. The English word for this would be a patten, or Treppen in German, and chopine in French. Okay. And this is leather sewn onto and molded around a cork core. So I do have a short video on this. It's about 2 minutes long on my YouTube channel. And I think I have one on Facebook as well, on my Facebook page, Creative Contessa. So if you want to see, the little video I did on this, not on making it, but on wearing it and observations about it in general. So you can see more details there and more details on the construction. But it has now been through a whole Pennsic, squish, squish. And yeah, some of the stitching is already coming out on the toe, which has also happened on the original pair that has survived from 1495, belonged to Beatrice d'Este, her pianelle. The front of her pianelle look exactly like this, squinched down, and the stitching has all come out right here. So accidental authenticity for the win. But I think when we repair this, I think we're going to attempt to actually make a deep, deep channel into the sole, so that the stitches are really actually truly recessed. My condottiere is hopefully listening. The stitches are truly recessed, and then we can possibly even hammer the leather shut over top of it, sealing it in. Okay, so cleaning. It needs cleaning everywhere, and I can feel that the leather is drier than it was. So first thing we're going to do is clean it before we apply any kind of leather conditioner, because after we clean it, even though the saddle soap is very effective at not stripping your leather, I still like to condition it. And because your leather is like skin, if you take good care of it and moisturize it regularly, it will last forever and it won't get wrinkles and crack. If you don't, then you'll be dealing with issues down the road. So basically, I wet my towel. I then, with the leather soap, just kind of scrub a dub until I can feel that there's a decent amount of soap in the towel. And then I just apply it. I didn't think about tables and whatnot that would need to be near me for this. Anyway, I'll remember that for the next time I do a live stream leather cleaning. So we just kind of scrub a dub, getting all that dirt off, and you can already see how much dirt it's getting off. Oh, let me see. Yeah. And I use circular motions, and this is actually the circular motion thing. I don't know if it helps or not, but that's what you do on human skin. So leather is skin. So circular motions it is. Right. And then I take the dry part of the towel and I just buff that out. Right. And even there, so that's not just dirt, just to be clear, there's also some of the leather dye stuff. These were vegetable dyed. So, those kinds of dye stuffs are not necessarily the most color fast. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with leather, especially if you have a leather belt and you're wearing it on your clothing and you sweat in your clothing. Remember that some of those dye stuffs are probably going to leach into your clothing, and red dye stuff, whether natural or artificial, red is the most unstable dye stuff in terms of color fastness. And so if you sweat and you're wearing a red belt, absolutely count on that red belt leaching into your garments and ending up with red stains on your garments, which is why the medieval belts that have survived, the ones that are colors like red or green or blue, the leather is not against your clothing. The leather is backed with usually some kind of linen or linen canvas. so that your clothing therefore ends up protected against the vicissitudes of the dye stuff in your belt. So if you're making a medieval belt, or any belt, any belt that's going to go on top of clothes in which you might sweat, then I highly recommend you actually glue on a fabric backing so that the fabric backing takes the hit on the dye stuff. Leaching, it's not the right word. What is the word when a dye stuff seeps into fabric? I don't think leaching is the right word. Either way, so that it won't leach into your clothing, it will leach into the fabric backing. Ask me how I know. So first I experienced the leaching and staining of my garments. And then I thought more closely about the way in which belts were backed. The extant belts, say at the V&A, are backed. And then I went, oh, that's not just a question of, making it pretty. That's a question of practicality, keeping your garments from being stained by the leather dyes. And they did dye leather. There's whole instructions, there are manuals on dyeing fabric and dyeing leather. And they provide all sorts of extremely detailed instructions that almost unusually provide almost every step you could need to successfully recreate the medieval dyeing process. It's refreshing when that happens. Medieval recipes for cooking are usually not that detailed. And I did say I would be doing a medieval cooking thing. The jet lag I've been experiencing has been kind of knocking me off my game a little bit. So I'm just kind of like mentally dead by about 4 p.m. But I am going to do a medieval cook along in the modern kitchen with the Contessa. I will do it this week. I mean, I need to cook to feed myself anyway. Might as well bring you all along on the journey and introduce some of you to the wonderful world of medieval cuisine, because I have been getting a lot of good questions in the live chat about medieval food. And there's a lot of really ugly misconceptions about medieval cuisine out there. So I plan on rectifying that as soon as may be. Now, granted, I do not have the facilities here to do medieval cooking using medieval equipment over the fire. In fact, I'd probably get deported if I tried to do that. I do have a rooftop, but I think they'd really object to me building a fire on it. Yeah. On the other hand, they probably wouldn't object to me using a burner, because Koreans use burners. They take burners out to parks and set them up and barbecue out in a park. So maybe I can get away with that. I can already feel this leather is just so much happier now that the dirt has been removed. So the problem with dust and dirt on leather, and this is why those of you who ride horses, this is why we use saddle covers. Dust is hydrophilic. Dust is hydrophilic, and so it will absorb moisture out of the leather into it. So you want to keep dust and dirt off of your leather goods. No, that is not water for drinking. Kitties for the win. Okay, here we go. Okay, now there's just one layer left, the sole, which is pretty gross. I mean, it's gross. I mean, it's dirty. It's not gross. It's dirty because literally I walked miles and miles and miles in these shoes at a campground in Western Pennsylvania. So, the soles, they're supposed to take abuse, Oh, Tiffy, your friend dyed belt blue, yeah, and it leaked everywhere, right? Yeah, yeah. So fabric backing, get something relatively heavy and dense, canvas of some kind. The medieval ones tend to be backed in, some of them are backed in silk, or something, a linen canvas or something like that, or a fusty in a linen cotton blend. Yeah, I think we've all made that mistake at some point about not, whether it's with our leather or with clothing, about combining red and white things, say in the washing machine, and then you end up with pink everything. Yeah. So after I wash this, or clean this, because wash is maybe a strong word, after I clean this with the saddle soap, and it's that dirty because there's just like massive chunks of grass and mud that were literally walked into the sole of the shoe. You can see. So this is not surprising. And it's just grass and mud. It's nothing offensive. It's it's not as offensive as medieval street mud would have really been, even in cities like Florence, right? Medieval, you had animal feces everywhere. You had in some places human feces in various places, human urine, animal urine. Most streets were not paved in medieval cities. There were paved parts. Some of the squares were paved, but most streets were not, which is why these shoes were invented so that you'd wear your normal shoe and slip it in and then walk around and you'd be elevated up out of the muck. So these were designed to take a beating, I mean, to take the abuse, the disgusting parts of the city landscape. Right. So what I have here is literally just mud and grass, clean, actually, relatively speaking. So sterile, mostly sterility, right? So yeah, it could be so much worse. And for a medieval servant doing this, it would have been worse. For certain. I'll check the comments. Let me see. Bertus, hello, welcome to my medieval sewing party live stream. Right now it's a medieval shoe cleaning live stream. I'm working on my cleaning up my pianelle, my 15th century Italian platform shoes that keep my the actual shoes up and out of the muck. So I'm just now working on cleaning the mud and the grass off of the sole so that that doesn't over time dry out the sole and cause it to weaken. Even though the bottom leather is indeed very thick and hammered leather, but still, I'd like to try to keep it as supple and moisturized for as long as possible for a maximum lifespan, especially considering how much effort goes into making one of these. I mean, it's not, yeah, there are things that would take more effort, but even still, it's effort and we don't want it to being wasted. Okay, one more brush with the soap. So just for those who are joining, I'm actually using Auto Wax saddle soap, which I really like for leather cleaning. They have all natural, so-called all natural formulas, which yeah, I know we can argue about what that means, but either way, they have all natural formulas and they're in Portland and they make their products in Portland and they come in metal tins instead of plastic. So I like that for many reasons. Okay, I do like to support local businesses. Right, so I can show you the other one so you can just compare just after cleaning the difference in look. Okay, clean one, not clean one. Clean one, not clean one. Clean one, not clean one. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and while it's still a little moist, we're going to go ahead and do the leather treatment. Now I did have Auto Wax. I had an Auto Wax brand, not a channel sponsor. So if you frequent them, if you go to patronize them, great, but not a channel sponsor. I'm just recommending their products because I like them and they work well. I did have an Auto Wax leather sealant. Unfortunately, it is all natural with oils and lanolin, and the oil went rancid after it's been 5 years and being transported in unair conditioned boxes across the ocean back and forth and back and forth. So I do, however, have this other item that I like. This is called Leather Honey. This is called Leather Honey, and this is a leather moisturizer. And again, it's made with unobjectionable contents, and the company is Leather Honey. Not a channel sponsor. I've just been using their leather products, their leather conditioning products for a couple of years now, and I have liked the results. So Leather Honey. And with this, you may or may not know this, I grew up riding horses and raising horses and breeding horses and racing, horsing and training horses and showing horses. And so leather care is in my blood. And so I actually just like to use my fingers for this part because it's a leather conditioner and it's fine for your skin. So I'm actually just going to smell to make sure it hasn't gone rancid. So I just kind of squeeze some of this conditioner onto the item, in this case, the pianella, and then I'm just going to use my fingers to rub it in. And one of the reasons several reasons I prefer to use my fingers for this. One, I don't lose any product to the fabric, right? Two, I can really get into the crevices and into the seams with my fingers much better than I ever could with a cloth wrapped around my fingers, right? There's more granularity, there's more finesse, more ability to really control how the leather is conditioned. Right, and you want to get both skin side and flesh side and hair side. The flesh side of the leather would be the rougher part. That's the part that's actually like facing the muscle of the animal. The skin side, the hair side would be the outer part of the skin, which is, you know, sort of the finished, smooth part of the leather. And I like to get both so that it's completely moisturized from both sides. So never just moisturize the top of your leather, always moisturize top and bottom. Condition top and bottom. I know moisturize, it does sound like I'm talking about my skin. And again, leather is skin, so here it is. And you really want to make sure when you're conditioning your shoes, leather shoes, any kind of leather product, shoes, whatever, especially shoes because of the dirt they're exposed to, you want to make sure you really rub it into the seams. This also actually helps condition the thread, and then your thread will last longer. If you're using natural threads, which we do, this, especially linen, this will really help your linen thread have a much longer shelf life, and you'll be fixing seams and whatnot much less frequently if you follow these tips. That wax is preserving the leather. So this is a conditioner, but yes, that's exactly right. This is, remember, leather is skin. And like skin for humans, if you moisturize it, then it's preserved for a long time and it's supple and won't crack, i.e. wrinkle, at least not as quickly. Leather is the same way. You want to moisturize the leather because it will preserve it. It will prevent it from drying out and cracking and crumbling. Leather will crumble, literally. So if it gets dry enough for long enough. So this is preserving the leather. It's also preserving the stitches, the actual thread that holds this together. So there's many benefits to this. Right? Okay, so nicely done. And I can feel that it could use a little more moisturizing here at the tip, which is not surprising because this part is literally, it feels like I just walk on that part of my foot, the front half of my foot anyway. So I'm just going to moisturize that extra. Yeah, I can already feel like the leather actually feels more supple. I can actually, it feels stronger. It feels more flexible, more agile, less likely to fray. And I can see that I haven't really been able to get into this area very much. So I'm actually going to pour a little bit extra of the conditioner straight into that seam so that it really gets into that, because this strap in particular is a place of impact, right? Because I'm pulling when I step, this is pulling like that with my foot, every flex of my foot. So you want to make sure that this doesn't rip and tear. So keeping it moist and conditioned will make it strong. Oh, crap. Oh, my screen's not going to be covered in conditioner. We get dub and wax in South Africa that I always use to feed my leather shoes. Also keeps the leather nice and soft as well. Oh, nice. Bertus, do you know, first off, are you in South Africa? That's awesome. I've actually been to Cape Town and sort of that part of South Africa. Loved it. What is dub and wax made of? Do you know what its basic constituent parts are? Like, is it lanolin based? Is it sort of linseed oil based, or is it petroleum oil based? I have a feeling that medieval leather was probably cared for with olive oil in many places, and possibly also, I thought something in my memory triggering with lard and or tallow being used for leather care as well, depending on where people lived, especially or rendered sheep's fat. There's something in my mind is just my memory is triggering on that. I know that they use lard and beef tallow for axle grease, by the way, for medieval wagon axle grease. That was the grease of choice. Um, Not a petroleum product. It's kind of interesting to think of a pre-petroleum world in which we didn't use petroleum for every kind of lubricant, in which lubricants were actually edible. How weird is that? Let me see. Did I miss? Can you recommend a good book on medieval clothing fashion? Oh my goodness. um, so I actually, on my YouTube channel, I have a couple of videos specifically on books for clothing and fashion. So you can check that out, because I think I did a video that has like 5 or 6 book recommendations. If you go to my YouTube channel, it's in full length videos, not under live streams, just a proper edited video. And you can actually see the books there. Um, a single book. Medieval Tailor's Assistant is actually pretty decent as if you're looking to make clothing, uh, in a relatively authentic manner. She's pretty good. Sarah Thursfeld is her name. There's a second edition. I recommend the second edition over the first edition. And let's see. And then if you're looking sort of at a more overview level, then there's a book called Medieval Fashion by Margaret Scott. I can recommend that. It's a good overview. Otherwise, I would need more input when you say medieval fashion, because the Middle Ages is a long period of time. It's 1,000 years, and Europe is this massive continent. What's a continent? And it's not a monolith. So I would need a little more. If you narrow it down to, I'm interested in fashion from roughly this time and this place, I can probably give you more exact recommendations. There's a lot of books out there on medieval fashion, though, and it depends on whether you're interested from an academic perspective or from a practical perspective, or both. Yeah, as Condottiero says, fantastic. Right. Okay, so here is the beautiful, shiny post-cleansing pianella. And yes, it's shining now. That will absorb in over the next couple of hours, or I don't know, maybe it's so humid. It might never absorb in until the winter when it finally dries out here. But you can see how nice and healthy that looks now. And again, we'll do a side-by-side comparison. Clean and happy and conditioned. Sad, dirty, and dry. Clean, happy, conditioned. Sad, dirty, and dry. But don't worry, sad, dirty, and dry is about to get its own makeover. Okay, so once again, we start with the cleaning process. So I can just show you what just one, the pianella started white. It started off white. Now, a lot of this is from the sole. Admittedly, it's not from the top part, but still. Okay, so I dampen my towel, and then I take my saddle soap, my auto wax saddle soap, and I just rub a dub until I can feel it getting slippery through the cloth. That means it's saturated sufficiently with soap. And then I just start cleaning in circular motions. Oh, Gwyn, are you also South African? That's so cool. Wow, I really love the diversity in my community these days. Yeah, now granted, it was 2009 was the last time I was in South Africa, so it's been a while. But I just loved it. I loved the vivacity, the delicious flavors of the food, for instance, just this wonderful, wonderful fusion of East and West and North and South, of African, of Indian, of Asian in some cases, of, incorporating, British and Dutch traditions as well. Really, it was so wonderful. And the people were so friendly. And of course, the landscapes all across South Africa are stunning. But the Cape Town has this very fascinating Mediterranean climate. So it actually felt very familiar in certain ways. Okay, so just gonna a little more soap. Yeah, it is really a cultural melting pot. It really is. And I could feel that when I was there. And I know, God knows, South Africa is going in a uh, has been sometimes going in a scary direction lately, like the rest of the world. Not South Africa's not alone. Like everyone else, South Africa's been going in a scary direction in certain aspects. Um, but I'm hoping that eventually the whole world will swing back from this. Please, God, let us swing back from this. Traditional dubbin can be made with beeswax, fish oil, and lard. Very cool. So dubbin's not a brand name, but like the name of the word for that kind of wax. That's pretty cool. Beeswax, fish oil, and lard. Yeah, beeswax, certainly. Yes, thank you. Beeswax is the other thing that's in the leather sealant that I have, beeswax and lanolin. Yes, thank you. That was what the other ingredient was. Yeah, I think it was the lanolin that may have gone rancid, not the beeswax wouldn't go rancid, but the lanolin would. Okay, so now that I've washed that part, I'm just going to buff it out. So buffing means you take the dry part of your towel and you just rub in circular motions and go around like this. Does your kirtle have gores? This one does in the skirt. Yes, I can't stand up at the moment, but I'll try to stand up later on and show you the gores. This one has a gore in front, a gore in back, and a gore on each side. Now, the question you should be asking though is, would kirtles have had gores in this era? And so I made this back before I'd found a couple of different extant garments from the 15th century, and I haven't found any evidence of gores, skirt gores, triangular skirt gores in 15th century garments, either in the few that have survived, such as I have, or in the artwork. So I'm not certain that I don't really feel that that is an authentic construction method for 15th century kirtle. And why is that? Because it seems like in the 15th century, there's a shift in construction methods from using gores to widen otherwise narrow panels of fabric to just actually sewing panels together until you make the fabric wide enough to just cut an angle for an A-line skirt. Right, so there's this gown, the golden gown of Queen Margaret of Denmark, it's called, whether or not it belonged to Queen Margaret, any Queen Margaret or not, who actually knows, apparently. There's a lot of debate about that, but still, if you look up the golden gown of Queen Margaret of Denmark, it is a 15th century dress, and as you will see, it's 4 panels that are individually, in turn, each composed of long rectangles sewn together to make the fabric wide enough to cut out the angled panels. So not triangular gores set into the sides, the front and the center or the back, but just rectangular panels, like widths of fabric sewn together until you get the right width. So I feel like that is probably the way that it should be. And then of course, the Beata Osana's 1460s Gamora, which is the Italian equivalent of the kirtle, right? That has no gores either. That one is also panels, rectangular widths of fabric sewn together until it's wide enough to cut the A-line skirt. So yeah, I don't think the gores are the right thing. And I will say that a skirt without gores, a 15th century kirtle without gores, moves more nicely for dancing than a 15th century kirtle with gores. Yeah. And in terms of the mechanics of how the skirt drapes, where the weight is, and all of that sort of stuff. So once again, I'm working on the very dirty sole of the pianella. Pianella, for those who are just joining us, is the 15th century Italian word for patten, would be the English equivalent. Trippen would be the German equivalent. And I'm confident that in Dutch, it's probably something close to the word trippen as well. These soles happily only were exposed to dirt, dust, mud, and grass, and none of the medieval horror show none of the horror show components that would have been a medieval street. So, it's dirty, but it's sterile, so it's fine. I use beeswax for my hair. Oh, nice. Richard, do you use it as a moisturizer or as a wax, like as a pomade to keep your hair in a specific style? Never thought to use. I think beeswax on my hair would probably. My hair is not heavy enough for that. It couldn't. I don't think my hair would stand up to the wax. The wax would just weigh it down completely. The beeswax anyway. Okay, so you can see how dirty these soles were. And again, to be expected, I walked around in them for 2 weeks in a campground in Western Pennsylvania when it was early on, when there was mud, and then later on when it was just dry and dusty as hell. So just going to give them another soaping. Let me see, just scrolling back to see if I missed anything. Medieval USA. Yeah, although medieval Korea, technically, I'm here in Korea at the moment. Sorry, I'm just going to sit so I can actually put my legs up. Yeah, I've gotten used to floor seating, so I actually prefer my legs to be on level with my body. Actually, pro tip, sitting on the floor, or at least sitting on a sofa where you can actually sit lotus style, is much better for your legs and your circulation than letting your legs dangle like dead weight beneath you. It's better for your circulation, and it'll help you actually stay more nimble over the long term. Chairs have broken our bodies in many ways. Western style chairs anyway. Okay. Oh, just great. I'm going to call that good enough because I think I could probably keep scrubbing these soles for days and I would still get dirt out of them. So I'm just going to call that good enough. Okay, so as we see, it's a much happier pianella now. So now we are going to move on to the conditioning phase. So once again, I'm just going to pour on the conditioner. And again, I prefer my fingers here, so I'm just going to rub it in everywhere, especially concentrating on the seams. And the conditioner will help not just the leather, as I said earlier, but will also keep the thread nice and supple. I have long locks, so the beeswax helps to keep it clean and strong. Yeah, I've got hair down to my waist, but I've got really sort of thin, light hair. And even just olive oil is too heavy for my hair generally. Question, have you ever spent any time in Sweden? I'm in Sweden and I know they have a huge medieval festival in Gotland every year. Yes, I have. I've spent a lot of time in Sweden. I've spent a lot of time doing medieval things in Sweden. I lived in Germany for 12 years and I belong to an organization called the Society for Creative Anachronism. And there's a very active chapter in Sweden that has local groups all over Sweden. And in fact, the SCA even has a camp at Visby Medieval Week. I've never gotten to go to Visby Medieval Week, though, because it unfortunately conflicts with Pennsic, this big 2-week medieval fair in Western Pennsylvania. So I've never gotten to do Visby, but many of my friends have gone to Visby, and we're there this year, in fact. Yep. So yeah, I have, in fact, spent a lot of time in Sweden. Stockholm, Göteborg, Jönköping, Malmö. Yeah, I think Göteborg is probably, Gothenburg is probably as far north as I've gotten in Sweden. But yeah, I used to go to Sweden several times a year, in fact. Was hired to teach dance there, medieval dance. Yep, all the things. Oh, you're part Indian and Thai. Very cool, Gwen. So you are the melting pot. I love it. Fantastic. Oh, yeah, man, food. I tell you, I could just do a culinary tour of South Africa. Just eat my way across the country, east to west, north to south. Yeah. So yeah, I love Sweden. Yeah, so Gwen, what do you think about floor seating? Do you prefer it to sitting in chairs? A lot of Koreans are actually have been the last several, increasingly all the restaurants that used to have floor seating, they've transitioned and remodeled into Western style table sitting. So, young Koreans don't know how to sit on the floor anymore. They've all been raised in Western chairs. And I think they're going to regret it. I think it's going to impact their mobility in later life because right now, septuagenarian, octogenarian, nonagenarian, centenarian Koreans are still nimble as hell. They can sit on the ground, they can get up from the ground easily, no problem, no help. But that's because they've spent their whole life sitting on the ground and crouching instead of sitting in Western chairs. And I think Korea is going to regret this Westernizing in that way, especially when the generation is about my age, and maybe even and younger, reach their 70s and 80s. They're not going to be as nimble, unfortunately, because they didn't grow up floor seating. They grew up and they gave up floor sitting in favor of Western sitting and Western bedding as well. When I sit in a chair, I actually sit with my legs up or crossed in a chair. Yeah, me too. And that's all my Korea influence. That's all influenced by my life here in Korea. 100%. Yeah. See, just like I'm doing now. I'm sitting on this settee like it's a Thai style sitting couch. Yep. Yep, we'll be going back to Thailand possibly in December. I will be teaching dance at a Renaissance fair. Yes, you heard me right. A European Renaissance fair in Thailand, outside of Bangkok in Nothambori. Yeah, so I have friends there. We love Thailand. We love the Thai people. We enjoy going there quite a bit. There are ways, you know. uh, it's funny. It's like Thailand is in that mid-development phase where it is extremely developed, but it is also not, I mean, it's not extremely developed, where it's developed beyond, being a pre-industrial society or style society. But it not everywhere has it actually reached the full development stage. So there's a lot of places in Thailand that are in that mid-development stage, which means that it's not necessarily the cleanest, it's not necessarily neatest, the buildings aren't in the best shape, but they're also not like old buildings. It's not historical. So it's like that mid-level thing. So I prefer personally either the completely historical or the ultra modern. I'm not a big fan of, sort of 1950s through 1990s deteriorated chic. But there's lots of places in Thailand where you can go and you can still experience the old style of Thai living, of Thai culture, of Thai history. Ayutthaya, which I think everyone would probably normally, except for Thai people, pronounce as Ayutthaya, is one of those amazing medieval capital ruins that was abandoned, and so you can actually just go to Ayutthaya and walk around this car-free medieval capital city. Even though it's in a partial state of ruin, it's still amazing. Yeah, so yeah, my condottero will get to see his water monitor lizards. Yep. Yep, and in Thailand, they have, baby dinosaurs, water monitor lizards. In Bangkok, there are city water monitor lizards that are all over Lumpini Park. And yeah, if you're interested in watching me on my travels, I have my travels with the Contessa channel. My travels, I think, with the Creative Contessa, I changed it to since people objected to the Contessa. And you can see my adventures there. I've got a whole Thailand playlist of our footage of our adventures in Thailand, and there is a video about walking the dinosaur in Lumpini Park. Okay. So again, as with the other pair of PNLA, I just want to really make sure that I get the conditioner into the crevice here, because that seam, that joint is where a lot of the stress is going to be on the shoe. So I want that to be particularly resilient. And again, this is why I prefer to use my fingers, not only because then I don't lose a lot of the conditioner to the towel itself, to the cloth, but also so that I can really have the dexterity to get into these crevices. I think I'm back to old time and everyone having a YouTube channel. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Twitchy. I appreciate that you enjoy my travel vlog. I really do vicariously travel the world through your stories and descriptions. Oh, thank you, Twitchy. Really appreciate that. I do like sharing. I like sharing the world with everyone, with those who either can't get to it on their own or who haven't yet gotten to it on their own. I do like sharing my travel stories. And in fact, News from the Creative Contessa. The Creative Contessa is hitting the road again. At the end of September, I am heading to Europe for a 2-week Mediterranean cruise on Cunard, and we will be hitting some of the most fantastic ancient sites. Not so many medieval sites, but we will be overnighting in Istanbul. So I will be doing a tour of Topkapi Palace if anyone wants to see what a late medieval, early modern Ottoman palace was like. It was built, for those who don't know, Topkapi Palace was built on the site of the original east of the palace of the Eastern Roman emperors, the Byzantine emperors, as we call them now. And yeah, so I will be live streaming from Istanbul, and we will be live streaming from all the places we're visiting. We're starting in Barcelona, so I'll be live streaming a walk through the Gothic quarter of Barcelona. I know some of you are going to criticize me for pronouncing it that way, but I learned to speak Spanish in Spain, so there. That's not an affectation. We'll be doing a tour of the amazing Gothic quarter of Barcelona. We will be visiting, let me see, our first stop, I actually think, somewhere on the other side of the Mediterranean. I don't remember. I know we're stopping in Athens, which we will definitely do a tour of the Acropolis. And I'm probably going to go full ancient Greek, Athenian Greek for the tour of the Acropolis. We're going to Ephesus. We will be doing a live tour from Ephesus. Ephesus, for those who don't know, is an amazing archaeological city. And the Turkish archaeological authorities have been rebuilding it bit by bit as they've been excavating. So it's pretty awesome. So we will be doing Ephesus. We will be going to Olympia. We will be going to, I don't think we stop at Rhodes on this one, unfortunately. Very sad about that, actually. Rhodes is one of my favorite places in the Eastern Mediterranean. We will be stopping at Corfu. We will be stopping in Mykonos. Mykonos is not particularly historic. It's just kind of a picturesque Greek island with picturesque Greek windmills. We will be stopping in Rome. I think we're going to Rome. Maybe not. I somehow remember thinking it was just mostly the Eastern Mediterranean on that one. Palma de Mallorca. We will be going to Palma de Mallorca. And I know that many of you are thinking, oh, Palma, that's a, German and British tourist haven. But Palma de Mallorca actually has a gorgeous Gothic cathedral. And I mean, oh my God, gorgeous. So yeah, we will be live streaming from there. So stay tuned for historic travel adventures with the Contessa. I will be live streaming that probably from my travel channel though. So if you're interested in that, check out Travels with the Contessa. If I see a lot of historical overlap, then I will live stream from both my Creative Contessa channel and my Travels with the Contessa channel. Yeah. Let me see. Will you go as Cleopatra in Ephesus? Oh boy, you tempt me. But it would be as the real Cleopatra, as she's described by the historians, not as not as Liz Taylor's Cleopatra. Yeah, so it would be in very fashionable Roman clothing, probably. Although wait, in Ephesus, didn't she show up as Isis? Was it in Ephesus where she showed up dressed like Isis? In which case, maybe I'll do a first century BC Isis ensemble. That's tempting. That is very tempting. Can I ask, on suede shoes, advice on how to clean treat them, not for medieval times? Yeah, suede shoes are not, I don't have evidence of suede shoes in the Middle Ages. It would have been impractical to have suede shoes because you're literally exposing the weaker side of the leather outward, and the medieval world is all about durability. So but I mean, I've had suede shoes. There are special, I've had suede shoes. There are special cleaners for suede and special conditioners for suede that if you don't care about your suede staining, then you could use any leather conditioner on it if all you care about is it being in good health. But the thing about using any of, say, these products on it is that it would probably darken the suede permanently, probably, especially something with oil and wax. So I would actually look up, if you don't care about it darkening, then go ahead and use, say Otto's, actually the saddle soap will probably be okay. But the Otto's wax sealant or the Otto's conditioner or the leather honey. Leather honey doesn't darken it too much. It's relatively neutral, but there would be some darkening. Yeah, suede is a little trickier. to care for. And getting stains out of suede, unfortunately, the suede side is like the very absorbent side of the leather. So if you get stains on it, it's really hard to clean the stains out of the suede part. Yeah. There is so little reenactment of Egyptian clothing from any dynasty, which is a shame, just a tide of polyester costumes. Yeah, well, you know me, Twitchy. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. And honestly, I don't think I have enough time between now and September 27th when I leave to actually put together a respectable ensemble. But yeah, no, if I were going to do it, I'm going to do it right. Oh, I think we're going to Knossos. All right, I wanted to do an ancient Minoan ensemble because we're going to Knossos, but ancient Minoan, that won't get me arrested for indecent exposure. Unfortunately, not everyone is accepting of the bare breast look of the priestesses of Knossos. Yeah, seems like I recall something about cleaning suede with cornmeal. Yeah, I honestly, I'm lazy when it comes to my suede products, so I use that's conventional. Uh, just can be the same leather cleaners that I use on my other leather products. So yeah, I would definitely look that up if you don't want your suede to be stained. So maybe cornmeal, maybe you're right. Yeah, Barbara, maybe cornmeal is a good option. Oh, good night, Gwen. Thank you for joining. Oh, sorry, Tiffy, good night. Not good night, Gwen. Let me just scroll back and see if I missed anything. I will be devouring the Gothic architecture 100%. We are not going to Alexandria this time. We're not hitting Egypt on this one. We didn't get on Egypt. We didn't get Egypt for this one. There was one that had a stop in Malta, and I would have been. I don't think that's this one though. God, I would love to go to Malta again. I love Malta. It's the fortress of the Knights of Rhodes, of the Knights of St. John. Yeah, would definitely love that. So these are actually modern leather shoes. These are my Clarks that I bought in Southampton last year. But I still treat my modern leather shoes even well. If you have leather shoes from any era, feed them, love them, wash them or clean them and condition them regularly. They will last much longer if you do that. I forgot to mention that I was also doing some of my modern shoes. Let me see. Do come to India. You will see. Oh, I have been to India. I've been to Cochin, which is a very interesting place. And I would like to get back to India, but I want to get out of the cities, right? I want to get out into the provinces, the states, and get out and explore the way people really live. I want to get to some of these artisanal handcrafts that they're still making in various parts of India. I want to do a culinary tour. I want to experience the very local cuisines in all the different regions, right? I really do want to get back to India, but I definitely want to get outside of the cities, the big cities. I mean, I want to get out into the country, as we say. We did enjoy coaching very much. It was a very fascinating difference in pretty much any place I've ever been before. And I've been all over South Asia. I've been to South Africa. I've been all over Europe, east, west, north, and south. So yeah, India is obviously part of Asia. So that was one of the more different places for many reasons. There was an interesting contrast between rich and poor, beautiful homes next to crumbling homes, whole patches of land just covered in garbage next to a beautiful park, cows wandering around randomly through the streets. It was fun. It was a great experience. I loved it. Let me see. I think a lot of modern ideas of modesty has really hampered a lot of ancient era reenactment. It's so frustrating. Yeah, Twitchy, 100%. If I do this Minoan thing that I'm thinking about doing, I'm really going to have to approach it carefully and with some modifications because I don't want to get deported. Yeah, I definitely don't want to get deported. Let me see. If you know a good cobbler, yeah. So exactly, that's a good tip, Twitchy. If you have special shoes, maybe you've got some kind of specialty suede shoe. If there's a cobbler, a shoe repair place, then you can talk to them. They know how to care for shoes. They really do. So they will be able to tell you. I should have shaken these out before I started cleaning them. There's like grass in them. Anyway, they will be able to give you good tips on materials for cleaning your shoes. They'll probably also try to sell you some product. I mean, they have to make a living. And a lot of cobblers, shoe repair places, honestly, I think they make more money from the product they sell than from the repairs themselves. So that's fair. They have to make a living. Let me see. Barcelona, Heraklion, Kujadazi, transiting through Istanbul, Mykonos, Piraeus, Capicolon, and Barcelona. Oh, we're not stopping this one doesn't stop in Palma. Sad Contessa. Must have been one of the other cruises. Well, that's okay. In Barcelona, we'll definitely get a lot of Gothic, and there's some interesting art museums, and I'll definitely live stream some of the amazing Gothic, so-called Gothic art that is in the Barcelona Museum for the Beaux-Arts. Yeah, there's some great and iconic pieces there in those museums. We only have we might actually end up having some more time. On the back end, we're thinking of spending a couple of extra days in Spain. And I really want to get back to Granada. I actually lived and studied in Granada for half a year, and I haven't been back since, and I really want to get back. And if we do that, I will definitely be live streaming the Alhambra, and I will definitely be doing it in my full Burgundian ensemble, because Burgundian fashions were also a presence in 15th century Spain. So I will definitely do that. If you could travel to any point in time, anywhere in the world, where and when would you visit? I wouldn't. Okay, so let me clarify that. So if I could travel to anywhere and any point in time in the world and be guaranteed to survive and not be injured or maimed for life, gonna toss that in there, because otherwise the answer is no, I don't want to, because your chances of survival are not particularly high in a pre-antibiotic world. But no, if I could be guaranteed safe conduct, at least the same level of safety I could expect in the modern developed world. That's a good question. Wow. I mean, I definitely would want to go back to the court of Burgundy and witness it for myself. Witness the splendor of the dukes and duchesses of Burgundy. I would want to meet Margaret of York and see her in the flesh. But there's so many, I mean, gosh, there are so many periods of history and so many geographies that fascinate me. It would be really hard to actually just pick one. I'd actually have to ponder that for real. I mean, I would want to go back to the Sheila dynasty and visit the court of Queen Sondak. I would want to go with some Chinese pirates and that Marco Polo describes, and see what it was really like to live on their ships. Wow. Yeah, I'd want to go back to the Mayans and the Aztecs, and see what it was really like to live in those places. There's just so much. The great Zimbabwe, right? The amazing kingdom that once flourished in Zimbabwe, the remnants of which are, the amazing stone structures are still there. Timbuktu, before the library burned to the ground. I would love to go to Timbuktu in its golden heyday. So many places. Gosh, I would like to get to the court in Granada in the first millennium, when it was still a flourishing Moorish kingdom, before everything started crumbling there. I mean, yeah, gosh, so many. Yeah. Reddit actually is good advice on leather care, so always check Reddit and other forums for good product care tips. Spain is one of the few places that I really want to try to visit, especially the Islamic architecture and Gothic architecture. Holy Week is such a spectacle. Yeah, Twitchy Witch, having lived in Granada, every day while I was studying there, I would go up to the Palacio Carlos V. So the unfinished Renaissance palace that was built by Charles V, because it was free. I would go and study and write papers in his palace every single day. I mean, talk about a spoiled study lifestyle. But even for a student, the Generalife of the Alhambra, those parts were also not expensive for me to access. And the the amazing medieval Moorish architecture and like the combination, the way that the Gothic was interpreted in combination with the Moorish aesthetics and motifs. It's absolutely unique in Europe and so stunning and just so magical. So I can absolutely recommend Spain. Spain also has a huge number of extant medieval garments in various museums. There is something about the atmospheric and soil conditions and crypt conditions in Spain that preserves textiles amazingly well. And so you can actually go and see these medieval garments very well preserved in a number of museums and cathedral treasuries. And if you make an appointment in advance, they will sometimes let you, well, they won't necessarily let you touch them, but they'll take you to them so you can see them up close. Yeah, Spain, highly recommended, very much underexplored from a medieval living history perspective, unless you're Spanish. I would like to meet Julian of Norwich or Hilda of Whitby. Oh, yeah, Hilda of Whitby. That's a good point. I would like to meet Elizabeth Woodville and Jacquetta of Luxembourg. Yeah, the court of Elizabeth I must have been a very interesting place too. You're so right. Honestly, there are so many amazing medieval women I would just want to love to meet and talk to. I hear stories and let them describe their own lives. Yeah, absolutely, Twitchy Witch. Yeah, it's, gosh, that would be, I would need to think about just one. If I could go back to just one point in place and point in time, which would it be? I would really need to think hard about that. It wouldn't necessarily be an easy decision because, the, the, the things that I like to reenact aren't necessarily emblematic of the entire experience. So if I'm going back to a place for an entire experience, literally, then that might be a different answer than just the period that I've chosen to reenact for the most part. Yeah, yeah. Cristino de Pisano. Yeah, yeah, for certain. Okay. Yeah, and as I'm even just with the saddle soap alone, which is not a drying soap, it's a cleansing soap, but it helps moisturize. I can already feel my shoes just getting so much happier. uh, the things we reenactors have to do because we don't actually have servants. Although I did know a guy in the SCA in Philadelphia who actually absolutely his retainers, the people who were his retainers in SCA and in the event life, they also retained for him in the real world. So they did all the things for him even beyond the SCA. So he had a very interesting dynamic with them. He'd never cleaned his own armor ever. He never did his own laundry. Yeah. Yeah, he was an interesting character. Yeah, Twitchy Witch, I can tell you, Spain and Portugal. Yeah, I mean, Portugal, especially the remnants of Moorish society there in Lisbon, for example, there is a first millennium AD Muslim hammam that's very well preserved, and you can go into it, and it's just kind of off the side of this tiny alleyway, not really advertised in any kind of way. Well, that was 2008. Maybe it's advertised now. In 2008, it wasn't. And I had a long 8-hour layover at the airport, and I literally walked into town because Lisbon Airport is in walkable distance from historic downtown Lisbon. And I just started wandering around and I stumbled across this bath. And it was, fascinating to see the similarities between the bath in Lisbon, the medieval Moorish bath in Lisbon, and the medieval Moorish baths in the Alhambra. I feel like you would be a perfect companion for the doctor, traveling around in the TARDIS to come back and tell us everything. Yeah, on one hand, there are some things about which I would definitely like to just know because we don't know because we don't have any resources describing that. One of the ways in which I would actually really like to do that is dance and even music, because with music and dance, the way the sources we have that describe dance may or may not, definitely do not, not even may or may not, definitely do not convey the whole picture. And so our interpretations of them may or may not reflect the entirety of how dance actually was. And so I would really, at this point in my medieval dance research journey, I would actually just like to see at this point what it is they're doing. I spent almost 30 years researching and reconstructing based on the evidence we do have. And so I feel like I've put in my time, and now I'm okay to go and see exactly what it is they actually did. And I'd be fascinated to compare that to my conclusions and other people's conclusions and see just how far off we really were, you know? So, but on the other hand, on other things, that would having the TARDIS would definitely take away a lot of the fun of the research. Obviously, it wouldn't take away the fun of the recreation because you'd still have the recreation aspect of it. But yeah, let me see. Um, I need to, yeah, Twitchy Witch. I definitely recommend making getting a list in advance and then prioritizing it, because at a certain level there's just so much, and especially there's a lot of things contained in these in lesser known cathedral treasuries that aren't published in catalogs, extant medieval garments included, by the way. And so you frequently need to just go into all of the cathedral and church treasuries, and even small church treasuries, and see what they have in their collection. It's amazing how much they haven't publicized. Yeah, so this is, for those who are wondering, this is a 15th century turn shoe. So it is called a turn shoe because it is actually sewn inside out and then turned right side out. So the seams were facing out, and then you literally turn it so that the seams are in. And you can do that because, like, as you see, it's super supple. It's not hardened leather like we use in our modern shoes. So hence why they are called turn shoes. And I think I've actually seen that term in 15th century inventory. And this one I've had for a couple of years now, and you can see the stitches are starting to wear away in spots, and that's okay because this can be repaired. And in fact, I have a friend. These are from Boots by Bohemond, for those who are wondering about a source of shoes. Oh, Condottiere, that's another person we need to reach out to. For those who are wondering about a source for shoes, medieval shoes, replica, good, affordably priced replica medieval turn shoes for various periods and places in medieval Europe. Boots by Bohemond is a really good option. All of my shoes recently have been from Boots by Bohemond, and they will do repairs for you. So yeah, turn shoes for the win. Oh, this poor one. Oh, just look how sad it looks. So this is the before. See if you can memorize the sad, sad, sad before, and let's see if I can revive this poor shoe. Oh goodness. Goodness, I waited too long for you, didn't I? Well, hopefully it's not too late. Did medieval cobblers use shoe lasts? That is a good question. I know that the I know that the medieval cobblers who are working now use shoe lasts. Um, and I'm trying to think pictures of a cobbler's shop. I have seen, I've actually got the book Shoes and Patents there, and it has a cobbler's shop on it. And I don't remember whether I saw them using wooden lasts or not. It wouldn't surprise me, though, if they did use wooden lasts. That would be entirely within their available technology, right? It's not beyond the scope of medieval ken to use a mold or a form. They definitely use molds and forms for other things. My brain is telling me that yes, they did, but the book Shoes and Patents, I should have grabbed it because I knew I was doing shoe stuff here. It's on my bookshelf right around the corner there, and I might take a 5-second break to dash and get it, hopefully without breaking my neck by tripping over a cat on the way. So Twitchy Witch, there are ankle boots. So Twitchy Witch says she needs a pair of turn shoes that have proper ankle support. So there is they have a pair of ankle boots that actually have this multiple lace system, and all the laces combine into one, and it actually wraps around your ankle, so you can actually pull it. It's like an ankle brace shoe. So if you go to Boots by Bohemond page and you go to, I think they maybe have it under ankle boots, check out the ankle boots and you will see it there. Gives really great ankle support. I know a lot of people in the living history world who need shoes with medieval ankle support, and they use those. Yep. Oh, welcome. Feli? Yeah, Feli? Is it Feli? Oh gosh, I can't see it on my screen. Hopefully it's Feli or Fel. I'm not certain if that's a flick on my screen. Welcome, any case, welcome to my community. Thank you. And on that note, just a reminder, if you're enjoying this, please like and subscribe. And if you would like to have access to extra content, a vibrant Discord community where I answer questions and provide extra resources, extra footage, uncut videos, extra where I share, my latest research and discoveries that I'm making, full hour tutorials that are not available to the general public. If you'd like access to that kind of extra content and would also like to support my endeavors in researching and sharing medieval material culture, then consider becoming a patron on Patreon or a channel member. Harold, lovely to see you, sir. Thank you for joining us. Don't worry, found it. Brilliant. Let me see. Hold on a minute. Just got to scroll back and see if I missed anything. Oh, yes, love dancing. And yes, really the language every time and ages in every era. Bertus, in case you don't know, on my YouTube channel, I have a whole playlist of hours upon hours upon hours of medieval dance instruction. So if you would like to learn medieval dancing and medieval and Renaissance dance, I have tons of tutorials on my YouTube channel and a whole playlist called Medieval Dance and another playlist called Renaissance Dance. So yeah, if you're interested, you can learn or learn more. Okay, what age in time were the Dutch klompen used made? Are the klompen, are you talking about the clogs, the overclogs? The full overclogs? If the klompen are the full overclogs, then I think I see those crop up for the first time in the 15th century. That's the first time I can recall them being documented too. But that doesn't mean that is the earliest time for them. Yeah, exactly, Twitchy. The Boots by Bohemond has, HEMA and harness fighting approved shoes. Yeah. Yep. And they stick by their product. If one of their shoes disintegrates much sooner than a leather turn shoe should disintegrate, they will replace it. No questions asked. They did that for us. So we really we've been dealing with Bohemond for literally over 10 years at this point. He stands by his product, and good quality for reasonable prices. Can't beat that. Oh yeah, this shoe is already feeling so much happier than it was before. Okay, so if you remember what it looked like before the cleaning, and I haven't even conditioned it yet, this is what it looks like after the cleaning. Much happier. Now, leather shoes. Leather will mold, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, but leather is happily recoverable if it molds. So first off, if you put your shoes away and it's damp and you're in a humid climate, they will just mold pretty quickly. Especially these shoes, because this is leather. It's not been treated to repel microbiota. So if your leather shoes mold, the first thing I do is put them in the sunlight. UV kills mold. It kills it fast. So first, of course, okay, no, first I take a cloth and I rub the excess mold off and give them a washing with your leather soap. And then I put them in the sunlight, and let the UV just burn the devil out of that mold. And that will nearly always be enough to recover your leather from mold. And of course, someone's probably going to come up and say, no, the UV light will destroy your leather. Well, the mold needs to be neutralized, and UV is a really great way to do that. And medieval people understood that sunlight had some kind of sterilizing property. They understood that. They didn't necessarily understand why. They didn't understand, obviously, the microbial science. They didn't understand about ultraviolet light specifically, but they knew that UV light had an extremely sterilizing effect. And so they sterilized everything. All equipment was put in the sunlight to dry. Clothing was put in the sunlight to dry, but kitchen equipment, dairy equipment, cheese making equipment, all scrubbed in salt and put in the sunlight to dry. Do not scrub your leather in salt. No, don't do that. That will just dry it out and make it crack. But you can scrub pots and buckets and kitchen implements and that kind of thing and salt with salt, no problem, and then put it in light. So yeah, if your leather molds, wash it with your saddle soap. Remove excess mold, wash it with your saddle soap, scrub it clean, and then put it in the sunlight, and that will take care of the rest of it. Thanks a lot. Really, first time I came across your channel this morning. It's honestly the first live oh, sorry. Gosh darn it. I hate. First live interaction. That's great. Thanks a lot. Oh, well, welcome. Welcome to my community. I've got another live stream tomorrow, medieval story time, a little bit later, but at roughly the same time slot as this one. Medieval story time, where I will be reading a series of excerpts from a series of chronicles, original medieval chronicles, and original medieval stories, and then we will discuss them together, sort of like a live medieval story time with literature lecture. I don't know. It's a lot of fun though. So medieval story time is tomorrow. Let me see. I wonder if I'll actually have happier feet and less pain in medieval shoes. Yeah, so as you all notice, this is another medieval turn shoe, right? This is another style. This kind of strappy style was very fashionable in Burgundy. Whereas this style is more what you see actually in 15th century Italy for women and men. So very flexible, right? So there isn't a lot of padding. So you have to learn to walk differently in these kinds of shoes. And I say this in my dance classes all the time, my medieval dance classes especially. You need to learn to walk differently. You actually need to walk on the front half of your foot, not heel toe, but toe heel instead of heel toe. Because if you strike with your heel first, you're going to give yourself heel spurs. So actually modern shoes with their heels have completely warped us and our ability to walk. It's an issue. And our ability to walk. The red shoes is missing. I'll have to go find it. Our ability to walk by having us walk heel toe instead of toe heel. Toe heel is actually the natural way to walk. So what this means is, at first your feet are going to get tired because modern shoes actually weaken our feet big time. Modern shoes take away basically they cripple our feet by making it so we don't need to actually use the muscles in our feet for anything almost. When you switch to a minimal shoe like this, you actually have to build the muscles in your feet back up. The exception is for people who do a lot of barefooting. If you do barefooting, then you'll be fine switching to medieval shoes. But if you're not used to going barefoot a lot, then you're going to have to there will be an adjustment period during which you're going to rebuild the muscles in your feet. And the muscles in your ankles, actually. And you'll actually have to kind of train yourself to walk differently. But once that transition is over, it should be better. Modern shoes, they've convinced us that we all need ultra arch support and complex inserts, and we really don't. We actually need to get away from that stuff. There are some exceptions. There are some people who really have truly messed up feet. But for most of us, we've just broken ourselves with modern footwear, rather than being cursed by nature with some kind of weirdly shaped foot. Okay, I'm probably behind. Clogs, however, definitely do sound like a medieval analog for medieval shoes. Yeah, Paul, working heel toe is so painful and for my poor EDS feet. Yep. Will Alessandro Strozzi's letters and Christine de Pizan be on the storytelling menu? They will at some point, and I guess since you put in a request, I'll just make that part of our story time tomorrow. Yeah, I'll read from Christine de Pizan's book of lesser known book of chivalry. Although I have to see what else I have on my bookshelf currently. I think I've got City of Ladies on my bookshelf. I'll have to go check that out. Let's see. There's a lot of alt communities probably wouldn't have been based on clothing, but rather religion or politics, even social class. So there likely wouldn't be as much material evidence. Oh, I see. That was probably in consequence of something I said earlier. Yeah. Okay. So just look at how much happier this shoe looks now that it's been all supplely conditioned. I can just feel how much more buttery the leather is now that I've cleaned it and conditioned it. And for those who are just tuning in, remember when you're caring for leather shoes, leather garments, whatever, especially shoes that you're going to put a lot of, they're going to come in contact with the ground. You want to make sure when you're conditioning that you also condition into the seams, because the seams, when the seams get dry, they're where they rip. And if the actual, not the stitches rip, but if the leather rips, that's a way more complicated repair to effect than if your seam rips. But that being said, we also want the thread, this to be reinforced, and the leather conditioner will also condition the thread in your shoes. So you always, that's why I use my fingers. I know for some of you, this is the second or third time you've heard this, but I'll say it again. I use my fingers to make certain that I really get the conditioner into the seams so that it really gets deeply nourished, the parts of the shoe that are going to take the heaviest beating. Let me see. You would make such a lovely audio of City of Ladies. Yeah, I might just do a straight through, a straight up reading of City of Ladies with no break for commentary and minimal glossing, and just put that out there for people who want some nice ASMR reading. You know, and that was what medieval story time was supposed to be, but then people ask questions and I want to answer them, and then I have thoughts, and you know, it just kind of devolves from there. Can you stop cleaning them and give me Can you stop cleaning them and give me a headache? I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm not certain what you mean, Noha. I believe I was told that you always use your hands to massage the leather to get the conditioner into the spots needed. Yeah, absolutely. I've been conditioning and cleaning leather for, oh, am I 30 years now? Because I started or 35 years now, because I started horseback riding when I was 5, and I started taking care of my tack when I was 5. So yeah, I've just always used my fingers for the conditioning part. Obviously, for the cleaning part, I'm going to use a cloth because you want the dirt to come off and not just end up all over your hands and rubbed into the leather. But for the conditioning, I always use my hands and fingers, 100%. What kind of oil are you using on your leather? So this is just what I happen to have now. I had a wonderful lanolin beeswax mixture, but it went foul. So right now I've got this leather conditioner called leather honey. It does work really well. It's not, yeah, it's a combination of things. It's not as wonderful and natural as my as the otter wax uh, leather conditioner and leather sealant that I prefer to use. But unfortunately, my leather sealant and leather conditioner have been exposed to too much heat and went rancid because they're a natural product. And you don't want to condition things with rancid oil because then the shoe itself will smell rancid. It just will. Let me see. Where do you get your leather shoes? So these shoes, these are by Boots by Bohemond. I don't know, Condottiero, are you there? Can you pop that in the live chat? And I have been purchasing my medieval turn shoes from Boots by Bohemond for 15 years at this point, actually, now that I think about it. Gosh, where the hell is the time going? For 15 years. So he has a wide array of men's and women's shoes from a variety of geographies and eras of the Middle Ages and Renaissance in all sizes. And he stands by his product, very reasonably priced for what they are. So yeah, Boots by Bohemond. And tell them that the Contessa sent you. He'll know who I am. No, he's not a channel sponsor yet. We'll see, though. Yeah, Boots by Bohemond. Boots by Bohemond. Yeah, thank you, Condottiero. Yep, he's actually based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. He does get to a variety of large SCA events throughout the year in the United States. This medieval organization called the Society for Creative Anachronism. Anyway, he gets to a number of those throughout the year, but has an online presence and an online store, and you can absolutely buy your shoes from him online. I have also done that. So these were actually repaired at Penzic by his shop clerk, William. And he was impressed with, despite their age, their good condition. He noticed that I'd been taking really good care of the leather, which made it easy to effect the repair, because part of repairing a turn shoe is actually to turn it back out, inside out. And if your leather is cracked and hard and not supple, then that's not going to work. Snow seal is a good leather conditioner. Do you know what the components of snow seal are? Um, oh, gangster mine, Al Capone, mafia mio. Let me see. Linen thread requires a lot of conditioning to prevent fuzz in the shorter threads. Yes, that is absolutely correct. Yep. You need to keep your leather thread happy. And these are absolutely made with leather thread, sewn with leather thread, or linen thread, linen thread. Yep. So yeah, look at how nice and supple this is now. Went from being practically crunchy with dirt. Don't remember if I conditioned this one already. Well, if I did condition it, then it's getting more conditioning. Can't wait to get a pair. I know they will have a large shipping tag, but I'd rather get a recommended product than have to take a chance on getting to know another shop. Yeah, I totally get that. And the current situation with tariffs is just stupid. But yeah. Um, Next, I think next year at Penzic, what I might do is I might offer to do some personal shopping for people who can't be at Penzic. And you know, if especially if I'm traveling to a place, then hypothetically I could hand carry some of the items to my patrons and my channel members, for instance. I will at some point get to England. I will get there, Twitchy. I promise. It happens once a year on average. It just for some reason this year it just hasn't worked out yet. But I will get there. It's inevitable. Of course, if you know of any opportunities in the UK, if you know anyone who'd like to hire a medieval countess to come and be Contessa-like and lead dance and or teach handcraft workshops, give lectures and talks, I can be hired and will happily travel to your country wherever you are in the world. People do actually hire me to go and speak at their conferences and lead workshops and just generally bring the Contessa magic to their events. So I lead balls. I've taught balls with hundreds of people, with leading the ball, organizing the ball, working with live musicians, lots of experience there. I've taught lots of hands-on workshops on a variety of medieval handcrafts. And of course, I give lectures. So if you would like to bring me to your country, I can be hired and brought. Do you feel like medieval researchers would be better prepared for a societal collapse? Yes. Yes. Maybe not medieval researchers, but medieval living historians. Yes. We will absolutely be much better prepared for a sudden shift into a dark age, because we actually do understand how to create things from raw materials. Like I know how to start a fire actually properly without matches or a lighter. I'm not good at it because I don't get to do it that often, but I know how, and I would get real good at it real fast if I needed to cook food or build a fire to stay warm. Right. Yeah, I feel like we would definitely be more prepared for the next dark age. Um, oh, Bertus, thank you so much for joining me. I hope to see you again in the community, maybe tomorrow during medieval story time. Oh, Twitchy, are you thinking of going to Penzic next year? Oh, that would be so amazing. You'll have to camp with me if you do. If you go to Penzic, you must camp with me. No questions asked. Oh, you're going to, sorry, I missed that. Battle of Evesham. So interestingly, um, the Battle of Evesham. So did you see the post that was recently made about the Battle of, and I'm sorry, am I pronouncing that correctly? I bet I'm not. British pronunciations flummox me sometimes. Evesham, where is the syllabization there? So there was a recent posting complaining about the inauthenticity of people wearing shoulder bags at that battle, the one that just happened, the reenactment that just happened. Yeah, there was a big hullabaloo about people wearing pilgrim scripts instead of carrying. Apparently, the more acceptable choice would be baskets, and also that there was a wide range of eras represented there instead of it all being. That's the 13th century one, right? A battle that happened in the 13th century. Yes, no. So she mentioned it should have been a 13th century impression. Yeah, so that caused a big hullabaloo on Facebook, actually. Okay. Evesham. Is that correct? Evesham? 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 Probably, and I'm going to assume in Middle English, it's probably Evesham because all syllables are pronounced in Middle English. But yeah, okay, gotcha, gotcha. Okay, fantastic. Um, yeah, there was a big hullabaloo about that reenactment, and there was one medieval fashion historian in particular who stated outright that she didn't think it was correct that many of the people were wearing medieval pilgrim scripts to carry their items. And particularly, there were people who were apparently doing upper class impressions who were carrying using pilgrim scripts to carry items rather than carrying what she thought was more appropriate, which was a basket. And it was I've never seen so much controversy over actually a medieval pilgrim script versus a basket. And her contention was that you only wear a pilgrim script if you're on pilgrimage. Otherwise, people did not carry pilgrim scripts. For those who don't know what a pilgrim script is, it's an over-the-shoulder bag worn crossbody, and it's just like this big rectangular or square pouch with a fold over flap. And it is a bag, it's a satchel that medieval pilgrims wore to carry the items they would need when they were going on pilgrimage, because pilgrimages were generally undertaken either on horseback or on foot. So for the on foot part of the journey, a pilgrim would have this pilgrim script. And her contention was that those are only used on pilgrimages because they're only really ever depicted on pilgrims, specifically on, Saint Santiago de Compostela, Saint James usually is depicted as wearing a pilgrim script. So she really didn't, for her, it visually ruined the event. Ruined is a strong word. It deleteriously impacted her aesthetic impression of the atmosphere of the event because there were all these people carrying pilgrim scripts instead of baskets. And I don't, you can't prove a negative. And so I think it maybe is that a pilgrim script is not the hill on which I would want to die for authenticity at a medieval reenactment. um, yeah, yeah, twitchy witch. I see what you're saying. It's so silly, especially as most reenactments start. Yeah, it's that's not the hill on which I would want to die or even care about. I'm and there were other people saying, well, if you're going to do an upper class impression, then make sure you have servants to carry your things because, the aristocracy would not have been carrying their own X, Y, or Z. And I mean, okay, they're not wrong about the statement about the aristocracy would not have been carrying X, Y, or Z, depending on the X, Y, or Z. But I'm not certain that we should say, unless you can afford to maintain a household of servants at reenactment events, you shouldn't do an upper class impression. I'm not going to go there. Yeah, that's also a hill on which I don't want to die. Are Amishes allowed to have phones and make streams? I'm not Amish. I'm a 15th century French noblewoman at home doing something a French noblewoman may or may not have ever done, cleaning her leather shoes. But the Amish these days do have phones. I grew up in Amish country, and I know that a lot of Amish people these days do in fact have smartphones. And they charge them using solar panels. So I'm not certain at what point they're going to have to admit that they are in fact giving up on the whole we're not going to use modern technology thing. A basket is open, as thus makes things difficult to conceal if they have neglected pockets. Yep. I mean, a basket is, especially an over the arm basket, that's going to get really heavy and inconvenient, especially if you have skirts you need to manage. um, and honestly, baskets, you don't see a lot of medieval women wandering around with baskets on their arms. Back baskets, basket packs, that's a different thing. And I know a lot of people at Penzic wear basket packs, which basically, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, it's a basket backpack, right? And you see, especially like grape harvesters, you'll see depictions of medieval people harvesting grapes, and they'll have these massive baskets on their back, and there'll be grapes in them. But we know they use them for transporting other things. So, yeah, I even still, it's not the hill on which I would want to die. Solar punk Amish. I didn't realize that was a thing. It is. It is. What is my favorite dress up? Ooh, Al Capone, I'm going to need you to be a little more specific. When you say dress up, what do you mean? Because this is living history, so I don't really consider this dress up. But if you're talking about if I were to just go to a masked ball or a masquerade ball, masquerade costume ball, a fancy dress ball, as they might call them in certain periods of United Kingdom. What would I go as? Oh, that is, I am such a fashionista. I love fashion from all eras. And it's one of the reasons why I wish I could live a very, 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 like, immortality would be okay with me as long as it comes with eternal youth, because I would never get bored. There's so many different periods of history, of fashion history I want to explore, so many periods of culinary and social history I want to explore. I really love Sheila era fashion in Korea, and I'm really starting to develop a taste for early Joseon fashion in Korea as well. I mean, I love later Joseon also, but Tang Dynasty China has some amazing things. Ming Dynasty China has some Song Dynasty, the Yuan Dynasty. They all have some amazing fashions. 15th century Indian clothing is, oh my God, stunning. Mughal clothing, medieval Persian clothing. There's so much out there. I don't know. But if I were going to a costume party, what would I go as? I think I'd like to go as like a 15th century version of Isis. And you'd have to be an art historian to know what I mean, or a really hardcore 15th century fashion historian. In historical art in the Middle Ages, artists often depicted ancient gods and goddesses, ancient Greek, ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses, but they depicted them in what they imagined an ancient Egyptian god or goddess would dress as. And there's this fantastic late 15th century manuscript. I think it might be Ovid's Metamorphoses, and it actually shows, it depicts Isis in late 15th century Isis goddess clothing, and it's just a fantastic ensemble. Like, so some of those amazing fantasy garments, like what is behind me, this is medieval fancy dress. This is not medieval clothing that real people wore. This is medieval fantasy wear. So some of these, I would absolutely make this outfit, for instance, to attend a fancy dress ball. Oh, Heian Japan. Yeah, Heian clothing. Oh, so elegant. All those silk layers with trains and with sleeves arranged in a carefully graduated manner. Oh, yeah, Heian clothing is really beautiful. Yeah, it's hard. Questions like what is your favorite? That can be really hard. But if you ask me what my favorite cuisine is, Indian. That's like a no-brainer for me. I mean, I love a lot of cuisines. Don't get me wrong. There's Twitchy, don't hate me for this, but the only cuisine of which I'm not really fond is traditional modern British food pre-fusion. It's just boring and in some cases horrifying. Um, but I love medieval English food. It's delicious and interesting though. Yeah, I love all Indian food from all over the Indian subcontinent, from different regions, different things. I love the idea of fermenting rice flour, idli and dosa. Oh, so yummy. Curries, all the different kinds of curries, just so good. Yeah, if you favorite cuisine, that's an easy one, but that's understanding that there are very few cuisines I don't love. Yeah. You can always dress like a king and go as a tree. That's fair. World War II ruined us. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. In fact, we went to a pub in Salisbury one Sunday afternoon, and it's Sunday, so it was a Sunday roast, right? And I'm thinking Sunday roast, that's got to be their specialty. This should be decent. Oh no, 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 no. The roast was could have been turned into a cabinet. It was so tough. And the gravy was so viscous that I thought it was some kind of horror movie saliva. It was stomach churningly awful. So yeah, I've not had good luck with what I would say is British cuisine, pre-Indian fusion British cuisine. Just and then we were in Scotland on Loch Ness, and it was, this tiny little village, and we went to the fish and chips shop, and it's pretty damn close to the ocean. The fish and chips should be good. It's a fish and chips shop, and the oil was rancid, and it was too cold when they fried the fish and the chips, and so there was a river of oil flowing out of the bottom of the newspaper, not dripping, flowing. Oh, it was horrifying. Of course, that's Scottish, not English food. obviously, but fish and chips is a British thing in general. So still, yeah. Never get a pub roast ever. Yeah, I learned the hard way. I learned the hard way, hon. Yeah, curry. I can eat curry all the time. Oh yeah, no, I do love, I will say one of my favorite cheeses in the world, hands down, is proper cheddar. Cheddar, which is the only cheddar technically, but you all know, of course, that are my cheese snobs out there like me. I'm a cheese snob, admitted cheese connoisseurs. Um, that the only true cheddar has to come from cheddar and be cave aged in cheddar. I love English cheddar. Oh my God, what a great cheese. Just so fantastic. But you know, I do love myself a good Alpine raw milk cheese, all the different ones. And those, of course, are very close. You know, those have definitely medieval origins, those Alpine cheeses, and probably cheddar as well, actually. Yeah. I can tell these shoes are just getting so much happier. So yeah, so for your medieval turn shoes, I condition inside and out. So I'm also conditioning the inside of the sole. Now you want to do this with plenty of time for the conditioner to absorb in, right? You don't want to do this right before you put your stocking feet in it. That's why I always try to do this as close to after the event as possible. Also, because you want to get that dirt off of it and get it reconditioned as soon as possible to maximize the longevity of your leather. What is your favorite alcoholic drink? Ooh, I really love sake. That's kind of an easy one. I really love sake. I had a flight this time a little under a year ago. I got to fly in business class on All Nippon Airways, and they have a sake menu. Oh boy. Oh my God, that was heaven. Pure heaven at 35,000 feet. Sake accompanied by amazing gourmet Japanese food. Yeah, that was a wonderful experience. I do love good sake, but I always sake must be consumed with food. You never drink sake on an empty stomach. Sake is best with yummy Japanese food, sushi, or some of the amazing delicacies that they make in Japan that's not sushi. Proper Lincoln ham is also good. Oh yeah, no, agree with that. Yep, 100%, hon. Yep. I mean, there are other good cheeses in England. I'm not saying there aren't. Just I know it seems like a workaday preference, but I really do just love aged, like crumbling, makes your mouth dry, and it's so wonderfully potent. uh, Chateau Mouton Rothschild. Are you talking about? I'm assuming that's a wine, right? Let me Stilton. Interesting. Stilton. Yeah, Stilton is, it's got a good punch to it. Stilton does. Stilton's not bad. Oh, I can tell I need to get further into the sole here. Oh, it's only going to work if you open the cap, Contessa. Yeah, so this pair I've had, well, it's part of a pair. I've had this one for 4 or 5 years now. And, even despite dancing in it and walking miles and miles and miles and miles in them all over a camping event site, which includes paved roads, by the way, although I was often wearing pattens. That's the other thing. Leather turn shoes like this are not intended to be worn on their own out and about. You're supposed to wear an overshoe with them. I didn't bring my pattens out. They're in the closet. So there's a wooden overshoe that was worn called a patten. And sometimes they were made of leather. And basically it's like an extra sole on the bottom, and it gets you up out of the muck a little bit. And it also protects the shoe from wear and tear. And then you remove those when you go inside. So these are not, and especially not meant for modern paved surfaces. You will walk through these, although this one has a pretty hard hammered sole, but generally you'll walk through leather shoes like this very quickly if you're just out on paved surfaces. So don't do that. Do not do that. Okay. Here we go. And some people actually have modern soles added onto their medieval shoes so they can wear them out and about and give them longevity. And that's certainly an option, but you lose some of that flexibility that is so valuable in a shoe like this. Yeah. This is 15th century. I'm a 15th century noblewoman at home doing something a 15th century noblewoman may or may not have ever done. But I say that the reality is that 15th century noblewomen were not like later noblewomen. They led much more pragmatic, much more hands-on lives and did a lot more menial tasks than most people realize. So yeah, just keep that in mind. 15th century noble European noblewomen were not useless flowers at all. Okay. And also these have leather ties, and so I'm going to make sure that I also condition the leather tie as well, so that they will last longer also. These ones have already snapped a couple of times. So clearly I need to keep them more conditioned. Welcome, Blue Hue. Welcome to the chat. Welcome to my community. I'm the Creative Contessa. Welcome to my court. Today, medieval shoe maintenance and care and feeding. I just came back from a big 2-week encampment, and I'm just trying to get through cleaning up and taking care of all of my items after the fact. Yep. Okay, so shoes are all conditioned and ready to go and just absorb their facials, as it were, their petals, their petals, and become healthy, happy shoes on the shelf. Let's see, did I do this one? Nope. Remember if I conditioned you guys. Well, I'm gonna condition you again just in case I didn't condition you. Have I made maternity clothes? I have advised on maternity clothes. So I haven't made them for myself, but I have advised women on maternity clothes because it can actually be very hard to find representations of medieval maternity clothes. It's not impossible, but it takes some digging, and I'm good at digging. Just ask Twitchy. It's one of my gifts is finding hard to find information. So there were different ways of. First off, what I'm wearing would count as maternity clothing. Why? Because it laces up in the front or on the sides, some of them laced on the sides. And basically, as the stomach grows, you just loosen the lacing or you only lace it from a certain point up. And then the belly has plenty of room. Also, frequently gowns would have lacing on the sides as well in the 15th century. And then you can just loosen that lacing as the belly gets bigger. You don't lace it tight, you just let it be loose over the belly. And then once you are past having given birth, then when you're nursing, we actually have some depictions of gowns with slits right over the breasts so that and they've got lacing. There's a Leonardo da Vinci depicts one that actually shows lacing that's been undone so the woman the Virgin Mary can nurse the baby Jesus, right? So we know that they had gowns, undergowns, and kirtles with slits over top of the breast so that the breast would be accessible for breastfeeding. Yeah, so that's basically maternity clothes, medieval maternity clothes in a nutshell. While you're pregnant, you have the lacing everywhere that allows the belly to expand. And then once you've given birth, then you have strategically located slits added into your clothing with lacing so that when you're done nursing, you just lace it shut again and done. Right. So that seems to be how, at least in the most of Middle Ages in Western Europe, that seems to have been how maternity clothing was handled. It's not like special extra clothing. It's just that the clothing was designed so that it could expand to fit your belly. Let me see. How long is the absorption process? So yes, that's a good question. How long is the absorption process for the leather conditioner? That kind of depends on the humidity. This is the most humid in which I've ever done this particular leather conditioning, so we'll see. I would give it at least 24 hours, though, really, to let it fully absorb. Yeah, that's what I would definitely do that. Yeah, shoes are feeling much happier now. They were not very happy after our recent travels. I could tell that the leather needed some love, some TLC. Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking, Phyllis. And if you mean maternity clothing from other eras in the Middle Ages, no, I know much less about maternity clothing from later eras. Although I do know, for example, in the 18th century, women just basically wore dresses that were kind of shapeless. so that it would give room to, sack back dresses and whatnot, so that it would give room for their burgeoning bellies. Okay, looking good. Oh, I was watching a tour on YouTube of a collection that happened during the pandemic of Van Eyck's work. And I'm so angry. I'm so upset that I missed this exhibit. It was in Bruges. I think it was in Bruges. Might have been in Ghent. Might have been in Ghent. In Belgium somewhere. It was a collection of once in a lifetime kind of collection of Van Eyck's work, along with some contemporaries of his, but mostly focusing on his work in various media. And it because unfortunately it was happening during the pandemic. The museum actually did a video tour, not long, kind of turbo 22-minute tour of the collection, because pieces of the Ghent altarpiece were included in this collection. So instead of being way up here on high, like the Ghent altarpiece is now, you were this far away from the panels of the Ghent altarpiece. And so you could really see the details up close. I'm so angry that I missed this. I didn't even know it was happening. But that was a crazy time in our lives. Even before the pandemic, things were not looking so great. And then the pandemic really, anyway, but in this, he actually, because I mean, we were getting so up close and personal in this tour, I was actually able to see something in some of his panels that I've never noticed before. So there, in one of his Annunciations, in Jan van Eyck's Annunciations, he actually depicts the Virgin Mary in actual, God, I forget which cathedral it was. He depicts her in a cathedral, and it was an actual cathedral. And his eye for detail was insane. Jan van Eyck, he must have been somewhere on the spectrum. Genius level stuff, obviously. I mean, in the positive way on the spectrum, like the part of the spectrum that allows you to be a genius. And because his eye for detail, oh, wow, he paints the inside of the cathedral exactly as it was in 1430 something when he did this Annunciation, exactly as it was, which means, and talk about meta, he depicts the frescoes, the 12th century frescoes that were still on the walls of this cathedral in that time, hadn't yet been destroyed by the iconoclasm of the fucking Reformation. Excuse my language, but that's how I feel about the Reformation in general. So you can actually see how this church looked in the Middle Ages, because he accurately depicted the interior of this real church. And he shows so realistically these 12th century frescoes that are high up on the transept, which high up on the wall, right? Like almost at the ceiling level on the wall. They're not there anymore. Those frescoes are gone. They were destroyed by those freaking iconoclasts. They might have just been whitewashed, but they're gone. And so you can actually, through Jan van Eyck's work, you can actually look at older art history because he depicts it so accurately. In that same Annunciation, he depicts the floor tiles in this church, which I don't think are there anymore. And the floor tiles were made in like the 14th century, late 14th century, early 15th century. And he depicts them exactly as they were, meaning that he captures another artist's style in his own work. So meta. It was so amazing to see that in this 22-minute video. Let me see, what was it called? Condottiero, are you out there? If you go to your YouTube, the Ryan YouTube channel history, it should be in there. I think it was like remote museum tour or something like that. If my condottiero isn't there and he can't get it into the live chat, I'll post it. Someone drop a comment under this live stream when it posts, not in the live chat, but a comment, and I will go and look it up. Unfortunately, my hands are covered in leather conditioner, so I can't touch anything at the moment. Yeah, Jan van Eyck, I've stared at his artwork for literally decades, but I was always looking at the clothing or the daily life objects. I wasn't necessarily looking at the background. Now I've got to go back and look at the backgrounds of all of his work and see what other details I've missed in his work yet. That was amazing to look at that, to see. I mean, I've studied 12th century art in depth as well. I actually started focusing my reenactment efforts on 12th century. It was amazing. And I know those frescoes aren't there anymore. So just talk about, wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Uh, Van Eyck is better than Da Vinci. I will die on that hill. Twitchy, Van Eyck forever. 100%. Million. Yep. Agree with you 1,000 times. I mean, just in the Ghent altarpiece, if you look at his Adam and his Eve, just the hair on their skin. Just look at the hair on their skin and just gasp in amazement at the ultra realism that this man managed to capture. Which is why when people say, well, then why do his angels and his virgins Mary look so strange? That's on purpose. It wasn't that he couldn't perfectly depict a real human. He could, better than a camera can, probably. It's because he was intentionally depicting this ephemeral, idealized face for both the angel and the Virgin Mary. That was the style of the 15th century, so that the viewer would know this is not a real person. This is not you. This is not me. This is not your auntie. It's not your daughter. This is the mother of God. And this is an archangel. So it was intentional. It wasn't a question of skill. It was a question of the painters were trying to convey a specific message. The artists were trying to convey a specific message to their viewers. Condottiero, go to the history on your YouTube channel, like the watch history. And we're looking for, it should be about a 22-minute video on Jan van Eyck. I think it might be called the Jan van Eyck story, but I don't think it's called that. It should be a tour. So I think it's museum tour or something like that. It was watched just a couple of hours ago. I watched it while I ate my breakfast, as I'm wanted to do. Yeah, and then I in another Van Eyck video, someone else was talking about how they think that his Arnolfini portrait is a wedding contract. And I was like, no, if it's depicting a wedding, it's depicting a wedding in heaven, because she's definitely dead by the time they paint that. The architectural details are just so perfect in the Ghent altarpiece. The perspective is so eerily accurate, to the point that I think he needs to be held up as a foundational in that part of his. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you look at the other thing about the Ghent altarpiece is that when it's displayed as an altarpiece, you can't get up close and personal to it. So you can't see that in many of the panels, he has depicted Bruges, real Bruges from the 1430s, in living color detail, houses and buildings as they appeared in the 1430s. Most of those houses and buildings don't look like that anymore. They were at least updated in the 16th century. So yeah, the architectural detail is breathtaking, literally, I would say, honestly. Yeah, 100% funeral. Agree with you, Twitchy Witch. Anyone who says, well, there's differing interpretations, I'm like, yeah, but there's a right one. I think I don't often say that, but in the case of Van Eyck's Arnolfini portrait, the symbolism is too freaking obvious to think anything else. Also, and maybe this is the most important point, it was painted after she died. maybe that should be the most obvious piece of evidence. Yeah, Van Eyck tour during the pandemic. Yeah, Van Eyck is one of my favorite artists. I mean, really, it's a shame that he died so young. He died at the age of 50 in 1944. Wow. In 1444. Can you imagine if he had just lived to the age that many not Italian artists lived, because the Italian artists were basically rock stars who died of syphilis by the age of 30. But anyway, can you imagine if he'd actually lived a full life and had been able to paint for another, say, 20 years? Just what other amazing masterpieces he may have created. Some of his works have vanished, and we only know about them, I found out in another documentary, we only know about them through 17th and 18th century paintings of aristocrats in their private painting galleries, right? In their in-home painting galleries, where they show the painter, again, Meta, has painted the room in which this aristocrat is sitting accurately with all of the paintings on the walls, and accurately depicted the paintings on the walls. And there we actually see, in one of these paintings, we actually see one of Van Eyck's missing works. So, that was also very interesting. Yeah. You convinced me about the Arnolfini portrait in another blog. Yeah. I can't claim some of those ideas were mine, but most of them were the fantastic uh, art historian Valdemar's. Most of those were Valdemar's. That was his interpretation, and I just happen to agree with it. And then once he got me down that path of looking at it from a really funereal perspective, then I saw lots of details about it that just, really put that into perspective. Wow, my hands are. Yes, you can tell I've been cleaning cleaning dirty shoes. Oh, so lovely. Well, I was going to work on something white now, but I'm definitely not going to work on something white now. I didn't think to bring a second cloth to wash my hands after. So here's what this started off white. You all may recall. It is no longer white. It's no longer even vaguely white. Oh my gosh. One aspect of the portrait I do personally believe is that it also depicts the reasoning for that marriage, the union of merchant and banking families represented in her green clothes and expensive bed. Yeah, agree with you 100%. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it certainly represents a marriage, but not necessarily the wedding. And it represents, honestly, I believe, the affection, a real, genuine, and deep and abiding affection that that Niccolo Arnolfini had for his deceased wife. I think that was his way of memorializing her and, keeping her alive as much as he could. The Mysterious Tale of the Van Eyck Family. No, not that one. The next one. The one before that. The one before that one. Let me see. Your story reminds me of a balcony in Egypt. The balcony's been painted with different settings since the 16th to the 17th century. It's still there today, and it's so interesting to see windows into the past. Yeah, Huey, agree with you 100%. Agree with you 100%. Let me see. Wasn't living to 50 considered old in that time? So no, because the average age by modern statistics is skewed because we factor in nearly always the average age in the Middle Ages factors in infant and child mortality. And the second you factor in infant and child mortality, it drags the average age, the mean age in the Middle Ages, way down. But if you control for infant and child mortality and look at just the age to which adults live, they didn't on average live to be, and if you control for death in battle, I guess, they didn't on average age, they weren't that much. Well, it depends, I guess, where you in the world. I would say that the average age was probably more likely 60 and 50. And old probably 70 would have been considered, old. Shocking would have been 80. 80 was pretty surprising, but there were 80-year-olds. I mean, Eleanor of Aquitaine lived to be 83, I think. So, and that was in the 12th century. So, I think we have a skewed perspective on average age in the Middle Ages and in any past era, because often that factors in infant and child mortality, and that skews the age hard to the lower end. Let me see. Okay. The Stay at Home. Yes, the Stay at Home Museum, episode 1. That's it. The Stay at Home Museum, episode 1, Jan van Eyck in Flanders. Yes, the Stay at Home Museum on YouTube. Highly recommend. Again, not a channel sponsor, just something I tripped across today. And because it was a tour of an exhibit, a once in a freaking lifetime exhibit. A once in a lifetime exhibit. It's absolutely a special tour, because these pieces of Van Eyck's may never all be in the same place again, and at least not in our lifetimes. If we're lucky, maybe, and maybe we'll know about it and be able to actually attend it. Who knows? Han says about the Arnolfini wedding portrait, it's also an idealizing of their perfect union, the perfect wife of the inner world, and the grief of a husband who is called outside. Yep, agree 100%. And of course, it's easy. It's easy to love a dead person, and it's easy to romanticize and idealize a dead person, and to excuse their flaws, and to let time soften any conflict that there may have been. Right? There certainly is something to be said about that. Okay, right. So I think I've managed to sort of clean my hands off enough that I can reasonably work on repairing my stockings. Got 35% left. Okay, brief moment to stand up and stretch. Oh, oh, yep. Always remember to regularly stand up and stretch when you are sewing. Don't get stuck, especially since I took like a 3-hour walk this morning. Okay. Okay, so back to some other things I was repairing. Oh no, twitchy, 100%. The Arnolfini wedding portrait is amazing. It's amazing on so many levels. I mean, yeah, just amazing. Yeah, Cecily Neville, Duchess of York, yeah, was about 80 when she died. And by the way, Cecily Neville, Duchess of York, left on a wonderful death inventory, which is a very illuminating for late 15th century Franco-Burgundian and English fashion. Okay, so what I was doing yesterday and what I will probably continue doing today, I was repairing stockings, hosen, as they're called in 15th century English. And we can see, yeah, I literally walk through them. And what I've decided is, because I can feel that the linen here on the bottom of on the sole is itself pretty friable. So I've decided I'm just putting new soles on them entirely. Where are the scissors? I'm just going to put new soles on them entirely. Yeah, there we go. So I'm actually putting a new sole made out of fustian, which is a linen cotton blend. And this is a really heavy duty fustian. So I've chosen that on purpose because it will hopefully last much longer than, than just a relatively thin linen. I mean, it's not thin linen, but it's also not super heavy duty like this one. Guilt, feeling horrible about our conduct adds to putting those who passed on a pedestal. Yeah, Joseph, I agree with you, definitely. Yep. So is anyone else working on any projects? I feel very much accomplished, and I'm much relieved, because I was worried that my poor shoes were just going to disintegrate. I seem to be missing a bunch of shoes. Yes. Kitties, did you run off with my shoes? I'm missing 2 shoes, one red shoe and one brown shoe. Well, I guess I'll have to go and see what happened to those. So, yeah, stockings, for those who don't know, medieval stockings were not knit in most places. We have some evidence in the 12th century in Spain, there's a knit pair of stockings. In Egypt, there are some knit stockings from the early Middle Ages, late antiquity and early Middle Ages. But otherwise, all evidence of stockings, most evidence of stockings, seems to point towards cut stockings cut out of cloth like this. The exception is in Scandinavia, they seem to have been making null-bound socks, not stockings though, socks. So just coming up to the ankle. Null binding is basically single needle knitting, not crochet, because there's no hook on it. Yeah, it's a kind of single needle knitting that's been done for thousands of years. It's like the earliest form of knitting, as far as I can tell. And otherwise, but it really seems that that technique was not used to make, stockings that go all the way up your leg, hosen that goes all the way up your leg. Where it does appear, it seems to be used to make ankle height stockings. So everywhere else in Europe, it seems, until the end of the 15th and the early 16th centuries, when we start seeing stockings that are knit. So Yeah. Now, why? Why they had knitting? They had two needle knitting. I don't know why. They even had four needle knitting. Actually, by the there, you can see there's a Virgin Mary knitting a shirt for Jesus using four needles. So I don't know why. If you have any ideas why they might not have done knit stockings until the 16th century, do let me know because we have examples of other knit items, knit pillowcases, knit pouches, knit hats. So it was a technique. They had it. They knew it. It could be done. I haven't I haven't really figured out why they weren't doing it for stockings though until hosen until that time. So yeah, hence you wear through the bottoms. I'm working on a ribbon skirt made from printed cotton cabbage for a fancy dress outfit. Ooh, that sounds awesome, Catherine. That sounds so fun. Um, just people who don't know what cabbage is like the leftover bits of fabric that you have from a project that all of us sewists toss into a box. Um, and it's usually, for me, cabbage is usually a half, like less than a meter, a meter, less than anything less than a meter. And then when you need random amounts of fabric, you go to your cabbage, right? Let me see. Uh, do I listen to Kanye West or does he not exist in this timeline? I kind of wish he didn't exist in this timeline. No, he's not my, that's not my style of music in any era. So no, it's not my, and he's kind of gone off the deep end. So I certainly wouldn't want to give him any kind of money for anything by buying any of his products. Okay, so I'm just going to pin this linen onto the bottom and then cut out the sole shape basically. Um, let's see. Uh, okay. Oh wait, currently on a bit of a break, needed to let myself relax for a bit. Twitchy witch, that is totally fair. I actually allowed myself 2 hours yesterday morning of watching a K-drama and doing a historic K-drama set in the 16th century, but still a K-drama and doing nothing at all while watching it. So it was an interesting experience for me. I figured out that maybe it's okay if I do that occasionally. Maybe I don't always have to be productive, but I don't want to say that too loudly because actually being constantly productive is part of who I am. And yet it was nice to just watch the historic K drama. um, Stop for the view, enjoyed the intelligent conversation. Good night. Oh, thank you, English Joe. I welcome to the community. I hope you'll come back for more. Don't forget to like and subscribe, everyone. Have a lovely evening, morning. It's pretty much morning where you are, I guess, if you're in England. Yeah, so K dramas are becoming increasingly popular throughout the world, period K dramas especially. And unfortunately, period K dramas generally come with the same caveats that period shows in the West come with, which is they make artistic choices that have nothing to do with historic realities, and especially in the fashion. And so I'm sorry if you all have been watching historic K dramas and thinking that's how the women really dressed. Depending on the K drama, the answer is probably not. They probably didn't dress that way at all. They probably dressed very differently, in fact. One, actually historically accurate hanbok, especially Korean clothing, especially from the Joseon era, would not be very convenient for filming in a lot of it. It would be much trickier than the kind of modified, modernized pseudo historical versions that they use, especially if they actually did the right layers, because layers in historic Korean fashion, the fullness in the skirts that you see in historic Korean clothing is generally achieved by lots of layers of skirts, not by one crinoline at all. It's not like not even at all, but like multiple tima, multiple skirts, just one on top of the other on top of the other with a layer of pants and another kind of layer of pants, and we call them petticoats modernly. even though in the Middle Ages that word had a completely different meaning. So, the thing is that you're not actually going to get necessarily accurate, or ever. I've never actually seen fully accurate clothing on women from any K drama that I've watched. There's always been, it's either been made tighter in the body and to make it more modernly scintillating, or it's been gussied up beyond the level of ornamentation that it would have been in the era, or it's been made more tailored and more fitted, like more princess seams and whatnot employed to create the silhouette instead of just relying on the draping and the belting to do so. So, as always, if you're interested in understanding how historical fashion actually worked, then don't rely on a K drama or a movie or a TV show to inform your idea of historic fashion. Producers and directors nearly always make creative choices that have nothing to do with history. And especially in the case of women, God knows. In the case of women's fashion, they nearly always completely modify it to make it super ultra sexy by modern sensibilities rather than by historic sensibilities. That's just it's just the way it goes. So never ever, if you actually care about historical accuracy anyway, you should never rely on a movie to inform your concept of historical accuracy. Yeah. Um, in fact, speaking of that, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is releasing releasing an update, downloadable content, as they call it, for the Legacy Forge. And I'm going to be doing a playthrough with Philip from Irish Medieval History. We're resuming our collaboration, everyone, with Philip from Irish Medieval History. And we are going to be doing a playthrough of the game. And I have not seen anything about this update. So I'm just going to be giving it my 100% genuine reaction and reviewing the historical accuracy of the material culture depicted in the game. So that will be when it comes out, the day it comes out, which is not this week, but next week. So if you want to see me be very snarky while also educating you about what is correct and what isn't, then stay tuned for that collaborative live stream. Let me see. Were you able to see the new version of Shogun? I have not yet seen the new version of Shogun yet, so I can't say anything about that. I do actually have some idea about historical Japanese clothing, so I'm confident I'll be disappointed. Oh, good evening, Dick. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for joining us. 15th century French for the win. Let me see. I should watch one, being a K-drama, wondering if they use similar arcs and all the conventional psychological gamuts that make Western dramas junk food for the mind. There are arcs. I would say that K-dramas have, especially the quality ones, have actually achieved next level character development, and they're actually generally good for the most part about not having. For the most part, the people you think are the bad guys are not entirely bad. So they're actually nuanced and have multiple levels, right? It's not just some cliche over the top whatever. And obviously certain K-dramas are more serious and more earnest than others, and you can tell right away how earnest it is and how seriously you should take it. There are certainly K-dramas that are 100% just popcorn, and you should really just enjoy them as such. But even the popcorn ones are like witty and humorous. They're really good about being witty. Even in translation, the wit comes across. So yeah, that depends on the one. One of my favorite K-dramas, actually, of all, is not a period K-drama. It's Vincenzo, which is about a Korean orphan who gets raised by a mafiosa in Italy and becomes the consigliere of a mafia family in Italy and comes back to Korea in search of buried treasure. And I know that sounds crazy, but it is an awesome, awesome K-drama. And I have watched it so many times. They literally intentionally make it feel like an opera. with opera music and actual songs from opera, from famous operas that actually are played in the right time for the right moment, for the right mood. And they actually have they this all kinds of art history is brought into it too, lots of subtle nuance, really witty, and the characters are way more interesting and deep and nuanced, multidimensional than you think they are when things start. So, yeah, highly recommend Vincenzo. I rewatch it once a year just so I can laugh a lot. And then the ending is really horrifyingly brutal, but also everyone who deserves it gets justice at the end, which is very satisfying in today's world. So Vincenzo is personally my favorite K-drama at the moment, or currently of all the ones I've watched. My favorite period K-drama is Rookie Historian Guharyong. It's an alternate history K-drama. It's set in sort of mid late Joseon, early 19th century Joseon, and the basic premise is that a core of female chroniclers, female historians is formed to handle the chronicling of the history, daily lives of the inner court. So that's all I've got to say about that. It's also very witty, very funny. The characters definitely grow and develop and will just steal your heart. So can also recommend Rookie Historian Gu Hae-ryong. If you look up Rookie Historian, that'll get it for you on Netflix. Let's see. Oh, Pablo. Goodness gracious. Hyper Beast, hello. Good evening. Nice to see you. When is the next debunking vlog with Philip? We're having a meeting on Monday. Medieval myth busting, you mean? We're having a meeting on Monday, Philip and I, to discuss our future plans. But this week on Tuesday evening America's time, middle of the night Europe, and Wednesday morning Asia, Philip and I are just going to do a casual live stream chat. We're going to talk about medieval news. We're going to discuss what we've been doing in the last month. So if you're interested for, just Philip from Irish Medieval History and the Contessa time, and it's a live chat, so you're welcome to ask questions about medieval history there as well. That will be Tuesday night America's, Wednesday morning Asia. Oh, Pablo. Oh my goodness. Let's see. Okay. Okay. So here I have cut out a vaguely foot-shaped bottom and I'm now attaching it on. Okay. Repairing the bottoms of stockings can be really challenging because it's kind of hard to keep your hand inside of it while also manipulating the outside in an efficient way. So sometimes it can take multiple times of pinning on that sole to the foot. And some of you have asked me about repairs. How often were repairs actually made on the clothing of the nobility? All the time. No one wasted anything. Not even the nobility in the Middle Ages were wasteful. Wasteful aristocracy is a much later development. So, we have bills for repairs in multiple household accounts from the 15th century, from merchant all the way up to royal peers, and the royal household itself has bills for repairs in their expense accounts. So everyone at all levels of society had garments repaired rather than just disposing of them, and even rather than just passing them down. I mean, you might think, okay, well, the king's gown it's got a hole in it, so he's going to pass it on to someone else. No, he got it repaired and then he wore it again. So yeah, there's so much we could learn from the medieval circular economy. I said this yesterday and I'll say it again because it's worth hearing and it's worth repeating. Medieval people wasted nothing. No one in medieval society wasted anything. Everything was used and reused and upcycled and transformed until it literally disintegrated. So the life cycle of a garment, for instance, so this is a linen kirtle. So I wear it until it literally wears thin to the point where the fabric doesn't have the integrity to hold together anymore. And then it's probably cut up into a smaller garment for a smaller human, or for a man's garment, which requires less fabric. And then when that wears out, it's turned into rags for various uses, for wiping things down, or maybe it's turned into pouches for relics, or seal pouches, or random pouches for any number of purposes. And then when it wears out even past that point, those scraps can either be used as insulation in walls or ceilings of buildings that are built, or it gets turned into rag paper, especially in the case of linen. So nothing was wasted in medieval culture. We're lucky. We are lucky when we find middens with actual waste products in them. And sometimes I think that's an accident. So that sock has a seam up the front of the foot. Okay, so this hose, so this particular hose has a seam right here where the foot attaches in, but not a seam here. There is no seam here. It has a seam going over where the foot meets the leg, sort of thing, right? Like that. And then it has a seam at the back. And this is the extant stockings. Extant stockings have some of them have this kind, especially the earlier ones have this kind of seam. Later ones, and this is more 15th century, honestly. So this is a more basic version, but a more sophisticated 15th century stocking actually doesn't have a seam in the front at all. This is actually one piece of fabric all the way down, and then there's a sole put in and little triangular gussets put in on the sides. And I'm certain that visual didn't conjure anything for you, and um, I don't have a way of drawing something for you here. Unfortunately, it seems like all of the writing implements are gone from this space. I really need to clean up this room. The cats had a party in here while I was gone for a month, and I haven't really cleaned that up very well. So yeah. Cleaning rags, even as menstruation products, fabric is so valuable. Yeah. Or example, yeah, for the linen can be used for monthly flow for your clout, right? So yeah, so many things there. Let me see. Sorry, I didn't mean to show that message on the screen. In medieval times, did normal people make their own clothes, or did they do business with a tailor? Was being a tailor a viable profession in those times? Okay, I'll start with the easy question. Being a tailor was a very well-respected profession at the time. It was through all of Europe. I don't often say this because Europe's not a monolith, but it seems that the professional tailors seem to arise in the 12th century, is when we have records of professional tailors. Anyway, there may have been in ancient Rome there were professional tailors also. But they weren't called tailoring itself. The word tailor kind of comes with some connotations. So if you mean clothiers, clothing makers, there have been professional clothing makers all throughout history, all over the world in different times and places. But there seems to be a gap between ancient Rome and the high Middle Ages, when we don't seem to have evidence of tailors as a separate profession. Now, I haven't researched the first millennium as much as I have the second millennium, so I might just have not seen the evidence. But for certain, I know that we start seeing in records of professional tailors in the 12th century. And then increasingly, and then guilds actually are starting to form in the 13th and 14th century. You get tailors' guilds. And so, yeah, it was absolutely a viable profession. And that's about the time that you started having professionals making the clothing, instead of clothing being made either yourself, by the women of your household usually, or by being made by an internal workshop in your household. Now, the royal wardrobes, for example, the royal houses of England and Scotland, and France and Burgundy, they sometimes had they had their own wardrobe departments, and they did have their own in-house tailors. But sometimes they had so much work that they had to, just like today, that they had to outsource their clothing making to tailors, to external tailors. Just like today, just like a company may have an internal legal team, but sometimes they get so much work that they need to bring in external lawyers to help them handle it all. So same idea. Yep. And especially as fashion gets more and more sophisticated and tailoring becomes more and more sophisticated, then you really start seeing professionals increasingly. And the professionals aren't doing everything themselves either. The tailor was a very specific job in the clothing making process. The tailor literally handled the taking of measurements, the drafting of the patterns, the cutting out of the pieces, and then they would contract out the assembly to seamers and seamstresses who would then do the sewing. The tailors usually didn't do the sewing, actually. They oversaw the construction of the garment. And then embroidery was handled by an embroiderer. Narrow wares were woven by weavers, by silk workers usually. The little metal bits and lacing rings, those were made by tinsmiths and pewtersmiths, right? Or bronzesmiths or goldsmiths, silversmiths, right? So, the tailor sort of handled the overall management of the project in terms of seeing that it was all assembled, and they handled the patterning, the drafting, and the design, and overseeing the construction, but they didn't handle making all of the materials, the components themselves, and they didn't actually necessarily do the sewing either. Isn't that an interesting difference? Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. What does memberships get us? So, um, on my YouTube channel, memberships comes with extra I publish posts, members only posts with extra resources and extra information. I publish videos early for my members. I also have a whole host of full hour tutorials, of extra videos, of unedited full-length footage that's only accessible to members. So membership not only supports me and allows me to keep doing this, if you'd like to see me keep doing this, because YouTube pays almost nothing itself. It's my members and my patrons who really make the money for me, who actually allow me to do this. I think I get $30 a month from YouTube ad revenues. So yeah, memberships also make sure that I'll keep doing this, because otherwise I might have to actually do something else and stop doing this. But membership also comes with access to full hour tutorials, sewing tutorials, dance tutorials, cooking classes, and extra publications. In my research, when I encounter interesting articles or interesting resources, I share those with my members only instead of kind of with the world, or I share content early with my members. So yeah, it can get you a lot. And I do a once a month Zoom session with my members and my patrons where I can actually see each other and talk face to face. I fell down on that this month. I'm sorry, my members and my patrons. Laurie, I don't know if you're still there. I apologize. Han, if you're still there. Takeda, if you're there, I apologize. I didn't get to do that this month. We will do one in September. I'll try to remember to schedule that after we get off of this stream. Yeah. So membership, YouTube membership, and Patreon patronage comes with all of those perks. Yeah. And depending on your level, you get more perks and more access to more exclusive stuff. That's a good question. Thank you for asking, Dick. I watched Rashomon when I was 14. It blew my mind at the time. Oh, very cool, Joseph. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. And also patronage and membership comes with access to our library, my personal library catalog. I have a library catalog for my massive medieval research library, my personal one. And so you can actually look through it and see what books are in my library. And if you're looking for books on very esoteric medieval topics, medieval material culture topics in particular, you can definitely find books in my library that are not going to be easy to find anywhere else, because I am a bibliophile and we have curated a very, very rare collection in many cases. Connection clean, yeah, the kirtle for the win, baby. 15th century kirtles are absolutely the way to go. They really are. Okay, I seem to have misplaced my pins, and we're running low on fuel. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the book corner section of our live stream today. Right. So for those who, speaking of libraries, let's go ahead and talk about some of my book recommendations for the day. And for those who are interested in hearing me read from primary source medieval chronicles, histories and stories and correspondence, and medieval fantasy tales like the Arthurian legends, tomorrow at roughly the same time will be medieval story time, 11 a.m. Asia time, 10 p.m. East Coast Standard Time, New York City time. So yeah. Okay, so book corner. So this is one of the Museum of London books the medieval household. And the medieval household is basically a compilation, a catalog of the items that have been found in London and that are part of the Museum of London's collection, medieval items from that would be found in a medieval household. So if you are interested in understanding medieval material culture in terms of what has actually survived, so you can actually see all kinds of things, bowls and plates and cups and hinges, lidded containers, right? Um, Pottery, anything used, like for instance, here is an extant, this is a kitchen equipment, an extant medieval skimmer for skimming items for actually fish, a slotted spoon basically, for getting that nasty foamy stuff off the top of your broth, which is prescribed in most medieval recipes. But also you can, when you deep fry foods, which they did, they fried foods regularly, deep and shallow, you can use this to fish it out of the oil, right? So this is an extant one. This is a medieval flesh hook, an extant one for fishing the chunks of meat out of the pot. You know, so this book is filled with all kinds of fascinating things, objects that you might not have even realized existed in medieval life. Complex locks, keys. You know, here's a extant wooden spatulas, which look a lot like the wooden spoons and spatulas that we have in our kitchens these days. So not much changes. You know, glassware. I mean, look, they've got just amazing enameled glasses. Look at those pieces of surviving glass. Wow, must have been beautiful as a whole piece. So if you're interested in the objects of daily life from a medieval household, look at that beautiful pot, hanging pot, then I recommend a medieval household from the medieval household, daily living 1150 to 1450 from the Museum of London series. They have a whole series. All of them are great. I think I own all of them at this point. The Museum of London series, medieval finds from excavations in London. And what's nice about this is that they talk about the item, they give its very specific measurements and the composition of the material, and then candlesticks. And then they also provide some history, you know, basic history about the category of item, right? So for instance, under mounts, a variety of sheet coverings, more substantial openwork friezes, lengths of framing, and cutout motifs of foil were for attachment to flat surfaces with tacks. So it actually provides, like, you know, an explanation of what it is they're talking about. Under furnishings, which furnishings they mean like accessories for chests and cabinets and whatnot. So yes, there's also information, not just the items themselves. So the Medieval Household Museum of London. Yeah, I know that I can maybe, this is gonna, okay, everyone, this is probably gonna trip you up a little bit if I turn the mirroring off. Okay. Hold on, I can fix this. Settings, video. Okay, it's gonna make you a little dizzy. Sorry, suddenly I'm going to look very strange probably. Okay, is it now showing? Yeah, okay. The medieval household, right? Okay, so definitely a recommendation. What's with the knobby facets on the glassware? It looks like a Fabergé egg. Oh yeah, so let me go back to that picture. So that is enameled. So that's enamel. The glass has been enameled, which means the glass is blown, it's cooled, and then enamel is applied, and then it's baked again. See if I can get back to that. So not only are those decorative, they are extremely practical, because if you think about glassware, here we go. Think about glassware, it's smooth until you add little knobs to it, and then suddenly you can keep a grip on this very expensive glass, because medieval glass was extremely fine. So you really didn't want to drop it, it would break. So yeah, these aren't enamel, these are blown, these are blobbed on from the blobbing process. I thought you were talking about the colored ones, right? Yeah, so you're talking about this one. Yeah, so those knobby bits are there for practical purposes so that it doesn't slip out of your hand. It's basically adding grip. Yeah. Connection. Yeah. You get a warning. Okay. So yeah, medieval Museum of London. Let me see. I think there's a picture in here of the candlestick, like the kind I have. The one that the Todd Cutler candlestick, I think, is in here somewhere. No, I can't find it. That's okay. The Medieval Household. Highly recommended. Okay. Now we haven't talked about dance much, even though medieval dance is one of my special things. Oh, yeah. So Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I know Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I actually did a video on this channel criticizing the clothing and telling you about the correct clothing that should have been. If you look up Kingdom Come Deliverance on my YouTube channel. And on September 10th, Asia, September 9th, Americas, evening, Americas, I will be doing a playthrough of the new downloadable content for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, The Legacy Forge. And I will be playing through it with Philip for the first time, seeing the game, and I will be criticizing 100% anything I see that I don't like, and I'll be pointing out how it should have been done correctly. So you can watch me play it coming up in about a week and a half, actually. So 100%. Okay, so orchesography. I know some of you have seen this book before, but I know I've got a lot of new members of the court, as it were. So orchesographie in French by Toineau Beau. This is a very amusing manual of 16th century dance. And I know 16th century dance is post-medieval, but it's still really fun to read because our Beau is snarky as hell. Oh, there's some interesting things in here. Our Beau is snarky as hell. And this is basically, it's presented as a Socratic dialogue between the teacher and his student. And the teacher, excuse me, the student is a twat. He's a dork. So I'm just going to read to you how this whole thing opens, because it starts as a conversation between the master, and the student. And let me see, where does he say? Where does he talk about the women who are out of shape? You can tell why Capriole. So Capriole is a student, and he goes to Toineau, he goes to Arbeau, and he says, I want to learn to pick up chicks. Can you teach me how to pick up chicks? And Arbeau says, the best way to pick up chicks is by dancing. I can teach you. and so that is the premise of this whole thing, and it goes downhill from there, basically. Trying to find that passage where he talks about wanting to pick up chicks. Yeah, but it's in here. So yeah, very interesting book, very interesting read. It also talks about what would actually be folk dances in the 16th century. So actual late medieval, early modern folk dances. It talks about court dances. It mentions all kinds of very interesting stories about life at the time. Yeah, orchesography, a very interesting read. That's how they dance in Gelderland. Heath Ledger, I believe. Yeah, Heath Ledger. You know what's funny about A Knight's Tale and that scene in A Knight's Tale where the dance master comes out and asks everyone what they would like to dance? What's funny about it is that the dance master actually mentions real dances from the 14th, 15th, and 16th centuries. Some of them are very much post Knight's Tale era, but they are historic dances. So he actually mentions them by name, and then they go and do the weirdest thing I've ever seen on screen. So yeah. Okay. On the clothing front, this is a series. I think there's maybe 12 at this point. Medieval clothing and textiles. This is specifically the first edition is the wrong word. Volume one. This is volume one, and I think they're up to at least 12 volumes at this point. This is a seminal. Seminal is not the right word I'm looking for. It's regularly published, or it was. I don't know if it's still being published, honestly. Collection of essays on a wide variety of historic fashion topics. So, and we're talking about clothing, you're talking about textiles. So let me just read to you the titles of some of the essays that are contained by this one. And they're essays by different authors, by different experts. Medieval clothing and textiles covers the entire medieval period and most of Europe, not all of Europe. So Stitches in Time, Establishing a History of Anglo-Saxon Embroidery, Textiles and Textile Imagery in the Exeter book, Pomp, Piety, and Keeping the Woman in Her Place, The Dress of Canute and Elfgifu Emma, Wrapped in a Blue Mantle, Fashions for Icelandic Slayers, The Orientation of Strikers in Medieval Fulling Mills, The Role of the French Guachiera, I mean, talk about esoteric, Bad Habits, Clothing and Textile References in the Register of Udis Rigaud, of Oud Rigaud, Archbishop of Rouen. Richie, if you're still there, that would be definitely interesting for you. Forbidden Colors in the Regulation of Clerical Dress from the Fourth Lateran Council, and the Tippet accessory after the fact. So a huge range of topics: secular, religious, workaday, textile production, right? Everything is covered in this. So medieval clothing and textiles series. If you are serious about wanting to understand and know about medieval clothing from all over Europe, from across the Middle Ages, highly recommend this series. You can definitely get it through interlibrary loan, 100%. Okay, and finally, my last recommendation for this book corner, and I have mentioned this one before, but it's worth a re-mention, The Society of Renaissance Florence. So this, I know that sounds a documentary study. It sounds, I know, oh so exciting, but hear me out, everyone. So this is a fantastic collection of primary source chronicles and texts from the era, talking about various aspects of life in the Society of Renaissance Florence. And it's broken down by topic. So for instance, economic structure, economic fortune and social mobility, the family, collectivities, so the commune, the parte guelfa, guilds, violence and its control, crime and punishment, public mores, gambling, prostitution, the surveillance of the convents, the popolo minuto, the little people in translation, aberrants and outgroups, so people on the margins of society, heretics, a whole section on sorcerers. Nevis, if you're out there, Society of Renaissance Florence. And Renaissance in this case really means 14th and 15th century, so Renaissance is kind of deceptive. I really don't like the term Renaissance. I think it's snobbery created by people who were living in the Renaissance, who wanted to delineate themselves from the people who came before, but really it wasn't that much different. Anyway, Society of Renaissance Florence, a documentary study, edited by Jean Brucker. University of Toronto Press. Very fascinating, very interesting read. Right. Well, tomorrow we have medieval story time with Ma, with readings from possibly the Society from Renaissance Florence, but definitely more letters from Alessandro Strozzi, and we'll get some Christine de Pizan readings for certain out there, and some other fascinating and interesting tales. Probably more tales from the Feast of the Pheasant, because we haven't finished that story yet. Let me see. There's no limit to the nuttiness in which the fleur-de-lis is depicted. Yeah. So remember that the giglio, as it's called in Italian, was the symbol of the city of Florence. Yeah. Let me see. Oh, wait. And that's the Society of Renaissance Florence. Okay. Okay. So, let's see. And then we will have on Wednesday morning, my time, Tuesday evening, Americas, Wednesday morning, Asia time, Tuesday evening, Americas. We will have more fun time with Philip from Irish Medieval History. It's going to be casual. It's going to be a chat and catch up. We'll talk about medieval news, news about discoveries from the medieval world, and we'll talk about our recent medieval living history endeavors and research, and of course, answer questions from all of you. And then, of course, next weekend, we'll be continuing with medieval sewing party and getting dressed. And I will definitely really try to get in medieval cooking time with the Contessa in the Modern Kitchen sometime this week as a live stream. Again, thank you to my members, my channel members, and my patrons for your oh so generous support. Thank you to those of you who left me super chats. I really appreciate the way you have gone out of your way to financially support me. I appreciate the members of my court and community who constantly comment, my super participants, Susan, Tommaso Nevis. I really appreciate Catherine, you're out there too. I really appreciate you all taking the time to leave comments, hit the thumbs up, and to share my work around and to be here when I live stream and be part of my community. Well, everyone, I therefore bid you a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And until next time, which is hopefully tomorrow, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until then, may your adventures be creative. Bye, everyone.